I'm communicating with someone, so hang on for a second here. I think you're gonna like this because I was just talking to Tone about this. Um, this is a crazy story. This is absolutely a crazy story here. I got to tell you guys about it. First and foremost, big sales. So this morning, as I'm hearing reports that the Eagles are going to sign and hire Vic Fangio as defensive coordinator of the Eagles, my high school coach, Joe Angelo, texts me. I went to school in Connecticut at Stanford Catholic High School. I went to a prep school. Believe it or not. Hey, I know. Shocking, right? Big Sills went to a Catholic school. Well, I went to a Catholic school. I did. And my high school coach goes, hey, congratulations on your friend getting the DC job with the Eagles. I'm like, Vic Fangio? I don't know Vic Fangio. I just told Tone, you could have put me in an electric chair and electrocuted me, put me in a firing squad, and asked me to swear, have you ever met him? I would have said, no, I'd never met him. And he goes, well, don't you remember me driving you up to Milford Academy in the early 80s after you got out of high school? There was an issue about my grades. See, I had 1,100 on my SATs, but I had a 2.1 grade point average, and I had to pass a class to get into college. And at the end of the recruiting time back then, only a few schools saved a scholarship for me. SMU, who was going to go on probation, and I think BC, outside of Maryland. All the rest of them had to fill their scholarships. So I was going to go potentially to a prep school called Milford Academy. And a lot of Penn State guys went to school there back in the day. Ton of Penn State guys, ton of Pitt guys. I think Chris Dolman went there. You know, the Hall of Fame defensive end for the NFL. And he went to school at the University of Pittsburgh. Anyway, so my high school coach goes like this, Sills, don't you remember who recruited you? I go, no. He goes, the guy you talked to was Vic Fangio. So my high school coach gave me his cell phone number. I text him. He goes, you don't remember me recruiting you? I congratulated him on becoming the defensive coordinator of the Eagles. And he's like, yeah, I recruited you out of Stanford Catholic to come play at Milford Academy. I held a scholarship for you. And I think he went to North Carolina after that. I only think he stayed there 1 year. Okay? How crazy is that story? You know, it's funny. I was just telling Tone, you know, through playing and being in broadcasting, it's crazy the amount of people you forget, you know, you've had interaction with. So Vic Fangio getting the job. You know, the most important thing about him getting that job is that he's going to be at least in control of that side of the football. You guys may not like the scheme, but what's going to be the difference from a year ago, here's a guy that's going to have autonomy in how he's going to run his defense. Now, obviously, there'll be interference from the front office and from management, but still, you're going to get coaches, I think, in the building this time, because we're going to talk about that press conference and my takeaways from that press conference. That there's no question. One thing came out of that interview or presser or fireside chat was that Nick Sirianni was neutered. He has no power. He is more of a department head now. He has no say in anything. That was made abundantly clear because I went back and watched that press conference twice. It was easily one of the most embarrassing things I've ever seen. And you had 8 days for that, and you put that out there for people to chomp on? 8 days you had. And that's what you went out and how you presented yourself. Really? 8 days, and you gave people that. People could say anything they want about his style of coaching, but It fits today's NFL. 34 defense, 2 safeties over the top, fast LBs. They need to get LBs or it won't work. Correct. And what you heard from Howie Roseman, I'm not very sure they're going to tool the right thing here, Christopher. I'm not sure they're going to. Okay? I'm just not sure. But there's no question that press conference, before I get in, I have my takeaways here. By the way, Angelo Cataldi will be with us at 4:30. Randy Cross will break down the NFC Championship game, the owner of 3 Super Bowls for CBS Sports. He played with the Niners, actually, and Joe Montana. We'll get his thoughts. Lions and 49ers. Tomorrow we'll do something with Chiefs and Ravens. Kadri Ishmael will join us tomorrow. So we'll break the AFC down tomorrow as we get ready for the conference title games this weekend. And we're going to get into our takeaways here. But that press conference, me listening, it was a bunch of deflecting. It was just deflecting. And not self-accountability. When it came to the person, you get this. Do you know what I took away from Howie? Howie's not taking any blame for anything when it comes to the personnel decisions that he's made. You know, he did say something about the underachieving defensive line. Okay, so that was probably, but get this, he gave more credit to the linebacking core than he did to the defensive line. And I was like, dude, okay, your defensive line didn't have a great year, but your linebackers were horrific all year. And you gave them more love in that press conference than you did the guys who were actually showing up at hey, they played at least 13 good games, 12 good games. That linebacking core never played any good games. Talking to me about guys who are not good. It didn't make sense. It just did not make sense. So let's get to the takeaways. You know, first off, wait, before I do that, what was the purpose of that press conference yesterday? What was the purpose of it? What did you accomplish? Knowing your position? We don't need to know that. Telling us what kind of went wrong? We don't need to know that. They talk too much. The entire organization talks too much. They don't owe you an explanation on winning 11 games and winning 25 games in the last 2 years. They don't owe you anything. They really don't owe you anything. Why do they feel the need to over-explain themselves on what went wrong? It's like you're more accountable to the media or letting the media know than you are to your own players. It's really ass backwards. It was just bullshit, that whole thing. Get this. Really, so no disrespect, and I'm just using Jeff McClain's name. So I owe Jeff McClain an excuse on why we went 1-6 down the stretch, and I don't owe more of an accountability and conversation with my own players. Hey, no disrespect to the media guys. Fuck them. I don't owe you anything. You don't owe me anything. I didn't get the purpose of the press conference. I just didn't get it. It was not necessary. And by the way, why didn't you do one at a time? Why didn't Howie do one? Why did you have to do it together? It's like a babysitter. I got it, Nick. Hey, dude, Bill Belichick doesn't do press conferences with assistant general managers. The guys who are in charge don't have a guy sitting next to them. They get up there in front and they sit there themselves and they answer questions about their football team. It's just really, there's too many voices. Just too many voices. It just doesn't make sense. I didn't get the purpose of the meeting and the press conference. And then for you to have 8 days and give you that shit, that was terrible. Hey, I learned more about your incompetence than I learned more about your competence. Is that fair? He made it halfway through the season and realized he messed up huge and spent the rest of the season trying to fill the linebacker position. Yeah, because Dean shit the bed. He was never going to do it. I said it from day one when they named him the starter. And they're naming him the starter again. I'll make it again. This is an easy prediction. He will not play the full season again. He will start the season and be on IR again by week 2, and he will underachieve. He's not good enough. Shit, before he got hurt, he didn't play well and they were targeting him. Dean is a bust. You got to come to grips with it. Have you seen one redeeming quality about that kid outside of him being a good dude? Let me get to this takeaway now. Again, I didn't get the press conference. I did not get I didn't get the whole thing. Kobe Dean's a bust. Hey, watch this. Sorry, guys. In my book, Nakobe Dean's a bust until proven otherwise. Here's another one. Until proven otherwise, Jordan Davis is a 2-down DT. Until proven otherwise. And get this. How many of you guys were waffling on that bullshit? You owe him an apology, Sills. You owe Jordan Davis an apology. I said, I don't owe that kid nothing. It's a long season. Let's see how it plays out. Sure enough, he went back to being who he was. Right? Hey, there's one thing I do like LJ. LJ goes like this. If Nakobe's a bust, what was your career? A bust. Yes. Take it from me. Yes. You got me. I know when I could spot one. Bust. Absolutely. Let's do the takeaways. Okay? Truth. Justice. The Big Sills way. That's what we do here. 8 days for that bullshit press conference. Okay? Hey, that's funny. Hey, that's a great one. I played in more NFL football games than Nakobe Dean did. That's still a fact. Who would have thunk that? I've had more tackles in one. No, I think Jordan had more this year. Yeah. I had more tackles in a season than Nakobe Dean. And I've actually played in more games than Nakobe Dean. Let's go to the takeaways. Brian Johnson. Here's Nick. He's a great coach. We just need a new direction. What? He's really a great coach, had a lot to do with the success here. But we just need new voices in the building. Come again? Do you like him or not? Was he a good? So he was a great coach. You fired a great coach in your eyes. You meant to say, we fired a great person. They're so uncomfortable in front of a microphone. Both those guys. They're so uncomfortable. Brian Johnson's a great coach. I was like, why did you feel that you had to? What's that stuff called when you do this? That you felt that you had to give like a reach around on why you fired Brian Johnson. Okay, he's a great coach. See, Sills, that's why you're My Bob Lang, if I own the Eagles. How you doing? Q, thank you, my friend. He's a great coach. I was like, okay. There's a first lie. Let's see how many lies we got here. Nick, we're changing some directions in our offensive scheme. Wait a minute. What direction is that? Actually trying to get guys open? Going back to the RPO? Why didn't anybody follow up on that? Like what? You wanted to get back to the 22 offense? Or are you looking to expand the 22 offense? Because don't bring back that 23 offense. I mean, we're looking for new ideas. Well, what ideas didn't you have in 23? Everyone had a career year. New direction? So Jalen's going to get another coordinator with a new direction for the 8th time in 9 years from his time playing college and pro ball. Sounds like you got this thing going. Nick, the offense got stale. You know what that's code for? It didn't evolve under Nick. How's that guy have a job? How does that guy have a job when he says his offense did not evolve? Now you know why your quarterback had to step back. The head coach didn't evolve. The offense didn't evolve. You had the same playbook and the same players. Don't you ask yourself that question? I was listening to Sports Take earlier. You guys know I like the show. And they had a guy on from Delaware, was it? And you know what they were saying? Well, there's a lot of talent on offense. Shit, it's the same talent you had in 22 that you had in 23. And Swift gave you another dynamic. Why did you suck? What was the problem? Direction? What staleness when everyone had a career year? What was so stale about it? Winning games? See, Shane wanted to win games. Nick and Brian wanted to put offensive numbers up and big numbers up. And by the way, is that not a philosophical mentality that the owner wants? Didn't this year's coaching staff, especially on offense, give Jeffrey Lurie what he wanted? Yes or no? Isn't that what Jeffrey Lurie wants? Big play, big numbers, high scoring. Isn't that the argument they had with Doug? They delivered that. Everybody across the board had career years. Aren't you seeing this? How did it get stale, Nick? How did it get? That's a lie. How can an offense be stale when you were more productive this year? Your quarterback had 40 touchdowns. How are you stale? Nick Sirianni has this job. You know why? Because he did what Leonidas wouldn't do. He took a knee. He is the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles because that guy took a knee. Whatever you guys want. You want to hire your own coaches? Fine. You want to hire your own staff? Fine. Because you know what, Nick? That's how you got the job in the first place. This press conference was comical. Every player that's at the NovaCare Center right now must have watched that thing and went, Jesus criminy. They're embarrassing Nick Sirianni right in front of your eyes. Most people wouldn't know it, though. Dude, let me tell you what happened. How he put his Pope ring out, and Nick kissed it. How about this question? This has to be the most embarrassing question I've ever heard a coach with a 667 win. Get this. You have a 667 win percentage. Let me set this up properly. You have a 667 win percentage. You've made the playoffs 3 years in a row. Your quarterback just got a $250 million contract. You've had, in the last 2 years, 2 coaches get head coaching jobs that were on your staff. How can you be asked this question? What's your job, Nick? That has to be the most embarrassing question I've ever heard. Asked to an NFL head coach, what's your job? We may have a neutered coach, but I just want to take a second to say Dallas stinks. Back to the programming. Philly 500, I love you. That makes everyone's heart feel good too. How many guys with a 667 win percentage have been asked the question, what's your job? What do you do? What is your job title? Well, I bring coffee into the defensive meetings, offensive meetings, special teams meetings, and I kind of like oversee. And you know what I do? I put a spreadsheet together. That's what I heard. This guy makes spreadsheets, checks on his departments, and then goes to his office. That's his job? Oh, man. What's your job, Nick? What's your job? See, when you got guys like John Harbaugh, Mike Tomlin, some of these other guys that are managers, they're not asked those questions. Mike Tomlin's not asked what your job is. Those other guys are not asked a question. What's your job? What's your job? What do you do here? It has to be the most embarrassing question I've ever heard an NFL head coach asked in my life. What's your job? Here. Howie. We have a lot of great players and a lot of young great players on our defensive side of the ball. Who? Who's young and great? Jalen Carter? Josh Sweat? Who else? Milton Williams? Who else? Who else would you consider great young talent on your defensive side of the ball? This came out of this guy's mouth. He's got, and he feels they have young, great talent on defense. He did, Flexen. He called Nakobe Dean great. You're I mean, not one of the draft picks showed any promise outside of Carter. I thought Sidney Brown was average. I thought Ringo was average. Look at the numbers. You were terrible in pass coverage. You were terrible across the board. Scheme, overrunning plays, no pursuit angles. Ray Lewis was laughing at you in that Buck game and your pursuit angles. Do you know how to run to the ball? Do you even practice that? Do you practice anything? This guy was telling you at that press conference, I watched it twice. that he has great young talent. Your core guys on defense are Josh Sweat, Jalen Carter, and that's it. The rest of those guys have a long way to go. 2 out of 11. And your backups are dog shit. Wait, Milton Williams. I'll take that back. I like Milton. Milton should be starting over Jordan Davis. Milton Williams should be starting over Jordan Davis, but Howie would never let that happen. You're going to start the season with Nakobe Dean as your starting linebacker. You're going to have the same shit you had last year. I don't care if you bring in Bud Carson. I don't care if you bring in Bill Belichick to fix that defense. When you don't have the Jimmies and Joes, you can't do anything. You could have the greatest scheme on the planet. When you got trash can linebackers, then you got players that can't play anymore at the corner position. I don't care what you think you can do. Can you fix it? Give me some Jimmies and Joes. Howie, I have a lot of belief in Nakobe Dean. I think he's a great player. Where did you get that from? When he played against Vanderbilt? Where in the world can you, how about this? I'll take anything here. Give me one moment where you saw he was good. Zach Cunningham, Howie, had a great year. You had 8 days for this. How do you sit there and listen to this if you're a media guy too, knowing full well none of this is true? I thought I was at a Biden press conference. Or for that matter, a Trump press conference. None of these guys were like politicians. None of this shit's true. Howie, it was Nick's call to fire Desai. So let me get this right. Nick said the offense got stale, which means it didn't evolve. And he decided to fire Desai, if we believe that, and I don't, but he said it. Big Seals, why, oh why, no reporters asked 2 dudes, why did the players told us the demotion of Desai came from you guys? Which one is it? They deflected that question. They didn't want to answer it. They didn't want to answer it. Okay? Nick goes like this, or Howie goes, yeah, that was Nick's call. So how did he explain to you that elevating Matt Patricia was Nick second guessing Desai? That falls on me. No shit. That's why coaches get fired. So the offense got stale under you. You made a poor decision on the defensive side of the football. Your in-game situational play calling blew out loud. Your quarterback regressed, and he kept his job. Kiss the ring, Nick. You got an ass kisser for a coach. I don't either, Philly 500. I do not believe it either. That whole press conference was a lie. Did the Eagles let Vic know they have no cap space? Hey, by the way, The Dolphins are going to file tampering charges against Philadelphia Eagles. My boy Armando says, hey, and by the way, just because they may have wanted to fire him, he was still under contract when they contacted him. That's tampering. Whether they were going to blow him out or not, he was still under contract with the Dolphins when they mutually parted ways. And now that the Dolphins know he had a job in waiting, that job in waiting, that wasn't just something that was made up in 10 seconds of a phone call after they parted ways. That was negotiated. They're going to owe draft choices to the Dolphins. That's tampering. When a coordinator is under contract, whether you're going to fire him or not, as long as he's still under contract, and if you're negotiating prior to that, that's tampering. Ask the Cardinals and Eagles. Get this. This time the Eagles are going to make sure they get their guy. So he mutually parts ways. The next day he has a contract all ironed out for a 3-year contract with the Philadelphia Eagles to become the defensive coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles. And that wasn't negotiated, but it was negotiated in 2 minutes. No, okay. Now, you'll believe that. Tampering. He was under contract with the Miami Dolphins. Any way you want to look at it. Howie, we need to make sure we're moving forward in a positive direction, that we're all working together. I don't know what that means. How about this? Duh. Nick. How about this one? This question was kind of, I'll give the media in Philly a little bit of love here, because you know what they did? They wouldn't get off the gas pedal on this. Do you know the media had to ask this question 3 times? 3 times they had to ask this question. Nick, Hurts and Brian Johnson and the new coordinator, what's the involvement? This guy went on some sort of like 3-minute soliloquy. Well, you know, we're going to do this, do that, and I'm like, he said nothing. It was like watching Charlie Brown. And I was like, I got nothing out of that. Nick, Hurts and Brian Johnson, asked 3 times. Finally. Well, you'll have to ask Jalen. You were asked the question 3 times. You danced around it. You never answered it. Classic shit here, man. 8 days for this. Hey, they were as prepared for this press conference as they were for their season this year. By the way, hey, the content is amazing. All you have to do is just listen to the bullshit. This ain't me talking. This is them. I wrote it down. Look. This is not me. I'm not making this shit up. Go back and listen. Nick Sirianni, I have to reprove myself. So the offense didn't evolve. I made a poor decision on Desai and Patricia. My in-game situational play calling sucked, and I have to reprove myself. And you're a 667 coach with a winning percentage, and you've been to playoffs 3 years in a row, and you have to reprove yourself. Jesus, man. Holy cow, this is just a really, I don't know what the hell to say to this thing. This thing was a disgrace. They did it. I mean, I'm not sure why they did this to themselves. What was the point of this? Get this. I'm just pointing shit out here. I'm not really, I'm pointing, get this, right, Tone? I'm pointing stuff they said and answered. I'm not adding it. This is stuff this is how they answered these questions. Like, I'm not adding a spin. I wrote their answers down. I put Nick, Howie. Here's Nick on Hurts getting better. His work ethic will right the ship. That's maybe one of the best lines that was in that press conference, and one I believe. I think there's only one guy in that building that can fix things. It's him. He'll fix him. Will Nick fix him? How about this? Let me rephrase that. Jalen Hurts will fix himself. Will Nick Sirianni fix himself? I'm going to make a point to you here. Jalen Hurts is outgrown Nick Sirianni. He's not qualified to be a coach for Jalen Hurts. Jalen needs a more qualified coach. And I mean a more qualified head coach. Fuck the coordinator. He needs a more quality leader around him. He's used to Nick Saban. He's used to people like that, Lincoln Riley and those kind of folks. Not a puppet who kisses rings and lies all day. He needs a better leader, dude. Most of these people have no clue how well you could come off a block and wreck the football. Love the honesty, brother. Thank you very much. It's all good, man. Nick Sirianni is not good enough as a head coach for Jalen Hurts. And you know what people are saying now? How can you have a win percentage like that? Because you got great players and horrible leadership. That's what they have in Dallas, kind of what you have in Philly. Really good players, not the strongest NFC. They're going to win a lot of games, but when the games matter, you're not going to win them. Because to win superstar games, you've got to have the Andy Reids. You've got to have the superstar coaches like John Harbaugh. You've got to have guys like that to get you through the finish line. Never invest in the horse. Always invest in the jockey. That's Warren Buffett. If you don't have the proper jockey, no matter how talented your horse is, he ain't going to find the finish line. And that's kind of what you got here. Nick Sirianni can't find the finish line. He couldn't find the finish line when you were 1-6. He didn't know how to turn it around. Trying to figure out the Eagles is borderline insanity. It is. Dude, Howie Roseman was just as much of a bullshit artist as Nick was. That whole press conference was just a bunch of bullshit. No wonder the players in the locker room looked at everyone and went, who's the leader? Guys, I'm not telling you, I'm adding some of my opinion on this. But if you just listen to their answers, how about this? How frustrated were you after that press conference? How frustrated were you when you listened to it? You went, shit, man. They told us more than I thought they would, but the other way. I didn't come out of that thing feeling better. I came out of that thing feeling worse. That's why I predicted you're going to be a 5-win team in 2 years. Howie was asked the question, why'd you bring Nick back? It's kind of like a low-key question. We brought him back because we have confidence in him. If you have confidence in him, then why'd you fire his DC? Why'd you hire a babysitter in Desai? Why did you hire 2 coordinators that had no experience? Did you maybe overestimate? Could this be a possibility? Think about this, guys. Maybe they overrated. Hey, can players be overrated? Can players be overrated? Do you think a football player can be? Is Micah Parsons overrated? How many people in here think Micah Parsons is overrated? I do. I think Micah Parsons is overrated. Do you think Micah Parsons is overrated? Do you think he is? Okay, compared to like when you see a Myles Garrett or a TJ Watt, players can be, and so yes. Well, why can't a 667 coach that's made the playoffs 3 years in a row be overrated? It works both ways. Nick Sirianni's overrated. He's Micah Parsons of coaching. He's overrated. Players can be overrated. Why couldn't this guy be overrated? They're hiding behind the record. They're hiding behind the playoff run. Howie, you put good players on the roster. That's evident. Look at the offense. You got 5 Pro Bowlers over there. And should have been 6 with the quarterback. 6 of the 11 players you should have as Pro Bowlers. Your coach is overrated, dude. Hey, how about this? Maybe that's really an indictment on the entire 2023 season. The entire team was overrated. Can that be? Can that 2023 team be overrated? Remember a couple of years ago when the Cardinals got out to a great, what was it? Like 11-0 start or 10-0? Steelers too a couple of years ago, like 3 years ago. They got out to some crazy start and everyone went, that team's overrated. They're not going to be a great team at the end. It was like Roethlisberger's last year, I think. Team was overrated. Get this. How many people in here think that Nick Sirianni's overrated? Remember this. You went through the same process that you went through with Doug. Howie almost said that verbatim. Remember what was the famous line they were using in that press conference? Business as usual. Business as usual. Business as usual. That's what this was. It was business as usual. You fired Doug Peterson, who won a Super Bowl, who lost 11 games. And you had the same coach who's a 667 win percentage guy, who's been to the playoffs 3 years in a row. Can I tell you this? If that was Doug Peterson, who had won 11 games and had been putting these teams in playoffs year after year, he'd get a contract extension after this year, even with the 1-6 finish. Why? He has the equity of the Super Bowl. Howie does. If Howie gets the equity of the Super Bowl, so would Doug. Do you understand that's why the importance of firing Doug? Because Doug had equity that Howie had. Howie can survive a 1-6 finish because he has the equity in the Super Bowl. He brought it up because we've done it before. Remember what I told you, Tone? Don't ever bury your assets early in a press conference or in an interview. Wait to the middle or the end. Howie brought 17 up middle towards the end. Why? Because we've done it. He was smart to do that. Because he went to his equity. His equity is 17. You see, Doug had equity of 17. There's nobody in that building that has that equity but him. Don't you understand that? Nobody in that building has the equity of the 2017 Super Bowl, but your general manager. So he can survive being 1-6 down the stretch. Nick can't. Nick can't survive that. That's why he's got to reprove himself. You know, this guy pulls his aces out when he needs it. 17 will always be his number one ace. Because when someone goes, how did we know you can do it? Well, we did it in 17. There's the card. Look at this. Steve goes, we all know that, Sills. I don't think you do. Because why would a guy with a 667 win percentage be on the firing block? I don't think you do. You could make the argument that Nick Sirianni has had some of the most success of any coach in the history of the Eagles. And you almost fired him? I like that Philly 500. That's a good one there. Hey, Hollywood, we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. Let me finish my takeaways from that fireside chat you guys had yesterday. Howie, the cupboard's not bare. The cupboard's not bare. You have no coordinators worth of shit. You have no defensive football players worth of shit, except for 3. And the cupboard's not bare. And then you know what people like to do? They'll dissect and go, well, the offense is good. Really? How'd that offense look this year in the second half of the season with all those talented guys? Good or bad? What happened then? If you have, and you're comfortable with all those players that you have on that side of the ball, and you couldn't make the playoffs, what's your excuse? Coaching? Personnel? I want to make a point to you here, Dan, to Howie Roseman. This is fantasy football as long as he's involved with football. Think about something here. Howie Roseman says that the cabinet and the cupboard isn't bare. You know why he says that? Remember what I told you yesterday when I asked Jeff Ireland a question? I asked Jeff Ireland a question when I was doing radio in Miami, and he was the general manager of the Dolphins. And I asked him to give me a grade of what he thought his roster was, and he gave me B's. And I said, and I fired back at Jeff, and I said, you've had 2 straight years of 6-10. And you give yourself a B for the roster, so it must be coaching then that sucks. No. Then he had to walk it back because he knew he stepped into a trap. You know what Howie's saying here? The cupboard's not bare. So it's coaching. He thinks it's coaching. The owner thinks it's coaching. He told you that with that one comment, that the cupboard's not bare. You can't just, you see, in the NFL, you can't talk about one side of the ball. You can't dissect that. You either have a great roster or you don't. 22 was a great roster. 23 is an unbalanced roster and an unbalanced salary cap. Why? Because you paid your quarterback. Howie robbed the defense, cut the team in half, hired people that weren't qualified, and that's why you're – how about this? What would you give the grade of that football team? Here, let's do this. What grade would you give that football team the last 7 games of the season? What grade would you give your team? 11 wins? You're overrated. What would you give your grade to the last 7 weeks of the season? A C for one? Henry thinks it's a C, and you were 1-6. Sorry, Henry, that's not average. C is average. You didn't have an average record. You were killed by quarterbacks who are journeymen. That was an F. Overhyped. How about this? Don't you think that your season also was a microcosm of Jordan Davis? Really good. Second half, F. AF. Eagles, AF. How? League caught up with you. League realized who you were. You weren't the 22 Eagles. Okay? You were overhyped. You know who I thought really kind of showed you who you were? I think it was still Washington. I know some of you think it's the Niners. I think it was Washington that started showing you a little bit about your weaknesses and who you are and where to attack. I kept saying it the whole year. Remember, even when I was talking about New England, I kept saying, man, if they just attack those tight ends with those linebackers that the Eagles have, they'll win those things every day. All of a sudden, teams started figuring out you couldn't cover tight ends. And you got a general manager that's walking around in a press conference telling you that he thinks that his linebackers played great this year, and one guy's got a great, bright future who can't stay on the field. I don't know how you justify that comment and not get crushed in it. I didn't see any comments made by the Inquirer, too, ripping that thing to shreds that he thinks that his linebacking core is a good one with a promising future, Mike Backer. That's what he said. Tell me I'm wrong. He thinks Dean's great and has a great future ahead of him, and that Zach Cunningham had a great year. He raved more about the linebacker play. And by the way, Howie, you didn't draft Zach Cunningham. You found him at the Milk Dud store. I mean, he's taking credit for Zach Cunningham? Jesus. Zach Cunningham is a borderline NFLer now. Nick, position coaches are in trouble. Okay, we're still evaluating that. He didn't say trouble. I added that. He said we're still evaluating the position coaches. And what did I tell you? Remember that point I brought up to you? You had 24 coaches last year. You made 12 changes by elevating players into new positions. I told you that'd be catastrophic, and it was. Think about what I said to you. I added up 12 new coaches that were elevated into new positions from the 22 season. There lies the majority of your problem. You didn't just have inexperience at your coordinating position. You had inexperience across the board. Do you know why they're going after veteran coaches now? Because those veteran coaches are going to bring in, especially what I heard with Nick today, saying that no coaches in the building are safe. Those coaches are going to bring their own people in. That's why they're going for experience. They're not just going for they're not just, here. You're not hiring Vic Fangio for the 34 defense. You're hiring Nick Fangio to bring you a DB coach, a linebacker coach, a D-line coach, an edge rushing coach, a safety coach. That's what you're hiring him for. See, people look at it in the macro. Those coordinators are going to bring in quality wide receiver coaches. I don't think you need to change the wide receiver coach because the last 3 years, that position has done well with two people. Now, that's a philosophical way about how you're attacking teams. So I don't know if that's a wide receiving coach's job to sit there and go, well, if you can't spread the ball out, that's not my guy's fault. You get nothing out of a WR3. When you hire Frank, see, you know what's crazy? How many times did I give you guys names of people that could be like Leslie Frazier or a Frank Reich or a Canales who just got hired by the Panthers? Those guys are not just being hired because they're coordinators. They're hired if they're given the autonomy to bring their people in and to execute their game plan and to execute their 43 or 34. You can't go into what you did. Here's what the Eagles tried to do last year. Hire Sean Desai and Brian Johnson had no chance of success. You know why? They were coordinators from someone else's offense. Brian Johnson was the offensive coordinator for Shane Steichen's offense. Brian Johnson was the offensive coordinator for Shane Steichen's offense. And Sean Desai was the defensive coordinator for Jonathan Gannon's defense. And they asked him to coordinate. Then on top of that, offensively with Brian Johnson, you had Nick's influence. So did Brian Johnson really have a chance of succeeding? Absolutely not. It was two different guys' offenses, and he was given the plays to run. Come on, man. That's not a coordinator. That's a do guy. Hey, do what we tell you. Personally, I think you did those guys wrong because you never really found out if they were quality coaches or not. You coached the coaches. Think of that. They didn't coach the players. They coached the coaches. You can't win like that. Eagles let John Harbaugh walk out the door. Tell me that's not what they did. They did more coaching on the coaches than they did the players. I don't want to hire a coach and have to coach him. I want him to do his job. But see, again, control, Lombardi Trophy. What's more important? Okay? John Harbaugh was a special teams guy. DB coach. We're supposed to fire Andy to promote him. I don't think you get anything wrong when you hire Harbaugh, do you? John Harbaugh could be a head coach at Tadpoles, and I'd hire him. Jim Harbaugh could be the head coach of Frogs. I'll hire him. He could run a zoo. I'll hire him. You're not going to go wrong when it comes to hiring a Harbaugh. Nick. Offense, we have to meet with the players. We have to get the players back on the same page again as we did. I'm not sure what that means. Their comments on Jalen Hurts, asking if Jalen is involved. By the way, just so you know, Todd Monken, John Harbaugh didn't ask Lamar Jackson whether or not he liked Todd Monken as a candidate. He had no say in that hire. That's leadership. And get this, that's Lamar trusting him. Think about that for a minute. Okay? Lamar didn't question or was asked about Todd Monken being hired. When Lamar was told that Todd Monken's going to be the offensive coordinator, he goes, hey, I can't wait to meet. I can't wait to talk. Baltimore always does a great job of putting proper people around everyone. I'm looking forward to going into the 23 season. That's how it was presented, and that's how it was addressed. He was never asked his opinion. What do you think of Todd Monken? And I'm not asking Jalen Hurts' opinion. Okay? If I'm asking the player's opinion, that means I don't know what I'm doing. What's your job, Nick? What's your job, Howie? Your job is to put the proper personnel on the roster and coaches in position to win. Those are your fundamental things that you are hired to do. If you are turning around and asking Nobody's asking Joe Burrow about coordinators or Kyle Shanahan going to Brock Purdy about quarterback coaches. Kyle Shanahan's making that call. This is in the best interest for you. I'm going to put you in the best position to succeed. And you know what that does? You think Josh Allen was told or asked about Joe Brady being elevated? They fired Ken Dorsey. The next day, Allen said, this is my fault, elevated Joe Brady because that was Sean McDermott's call. This is in the best interest for you. And it was. Problem solver. That's what coaches do. And do you know what that does when you do that? You build equity up with your player because then the player goes like this. Holy shit, they are doing right by me. You got to ask guys questions and you got to give 50 different opinions. You don't have any leadership in your room. Football players want to be coached. They want to feel that you're putting them in a position to win. They don't want to know what kind of chaos is going on. So that notion that Jalen Hurts has to be involved in who his coordinator is, not me. Because if that's the case, your management team is running your organization again. And my question mark on Jalen moving forward and getting better will still be there. And you're going to rely more on him to get this right, and he'll have more shitty coaching around him. I would say this. In 8 of the 9 years that he's had all these coordinators, half of them guys sucked. So there's a 50-50 chance he gets a guy that's going to help him. A coach has to have something to bring to the table. Who's the best guy for Hurts? This is what you talk to your player about when you're Jalen. We want to look at a guy and you give him a profile. You don't give him a name. You give him a profile of what you're looking for. Because that's why they're interviewing 100 guys. I heard some people going like this, Kellen Moore sucks. Kellen Moore may be the right choice for Jalen. You don't know that. I don't know that. Was he right for Herbert? Nope. Was he right for Dak? Kind of, but not really. You know, these coordinators, sometimes they fit, sometimes they don't fit. Nathaniel Hackett works with Aaron Rodgers. Nathaniel Hackett doesn't work with anyone else. North Turner worked with Troy Aikman. Doesn't really work with anyone else. That all goes hand in hand. It's not a simple hire. Who's the wide receiver coach? Who's the running back coach? Are you going to retain Jeff Stoutland? Probably. I hope you do. No ex-Cowboys. I don't give a shit where this guy coached. I care about getting Hurts right. Whatever that looks like. Dude, this stuff with putting tags on people because they were here or there is idiotic. You're looking for the most qualified person you can possibly have. Okay? I want the best coach to be put in the best position, to be given the most autonomy he can possibly have to help that kid elevate his game. Nothing else. I don't care what he looks like. I don't care what his resume is. I want to know what he's going to do for that kid. Okay? Well, this guy played here. This guy, who fucking cares? Okay? Who cares? That's like doing this. Check it out. Here. Emmitt Smith in his prime. Eagle guys wouldn't want Emmitt Smith as a running back on their team because he's a Cowboy. I mean, do you play with dolls and shit? Do you make sandcastles? I mean, do you have a Slurpee machine at home? I'm like, what are you talking about? Takeaway, final takeaway here. Nick has this job because he kissed the ring. Plain and simple. He bent over. And he kissed the ring. Hey, Nick, we're going to do this. We're going to do that. If you're not happy with it. That's what Nick said. I have to reprove myself because you know what that meant? They told him and read him the riot act in that meeting. Hey, man, this fell apart more so than what we thought. And you know what I think they have? I don't think they have buyer's remorse about Nick. I think they lost some faith in him. Because when a head coach has to say, I have to reprove myself with a 667 win percentage and 3 straight playoff runs, you know he was read the riot act. Saints interview 49ers, Clint Kubiak, Brian Griese, and meanwhile, I got it. I mean, dude, that press conference led me to believe that there's total non-belief that it was player. They don't believe the player. Get this. They don't believe that the players on the roster were the issues at the end of the year. They believed it was the coordinators and new ideas were needed in a stale offense. They blame Nick. Howie and the owner aren't blaming them. Once again, they're staying the course and their egos. That's what I took away. You had 8 days. And, you know, I heard, no disrespect, Tone, but I heard that guy that was on, they were humbled. They were lying. They were bullshit artists. Hey, you can humble yourself in front of the media because that's what the media wants to see. That was a production. They put a show on. There was nothing truthful about the answers or the presentation of it. And if you buy that, that's on you, man. Sorry. I don't subscribe to that kind of shit. Because I'm a result-driven dude. Either you're winning or you're losing. You don't have to show contrition to me. I don't give a shit about contrition. I don't care about sorries and press conferences on Wednesdays. I don't care about you making lies up and then turning around lying again about the lie. I care about you winning. And get this. To hear some media people say that Nick and Howie were humbled, you'll believe anything. I mean, who gives a shit if they're humbled? What does being humbled have to do with anything? They're paid $6 to $8 million to coach the team. I'm sure Howie's in the $3.5 million area for being a GM. I don't give a shit if you're humbled. Didn't you feel that those guys were contrite? That's like being asked, Nick, how you feeling? Is everything in the weight of the world on your shoulder? I don't care. You didn't care when you fired Desai twice. But I'm supposed to care about that bullshit comment and that bullshit press conference like that? Man, I can't believe how you people fall for that shit. That was a train wreck of a press conference. There was not one redeeming thing about that press conference that was truthful. Kobe Dean's great. Zach Cunningham's great. Our cupboard is not bare. We got a lot of young, great, talented players on defense. What's he talking about? What is he talking about? What was he talking about? And again, what was the purpose of the fireside chat? It was to bullshit you. Hey, how about this? What did you take away positive? Hey, I'll tell you what I'll do. What was the positive thing that you took away from this thing they did yesterday? What was the positive thing that you took away from it? And you know what? If there was, maybe I missed it. What was the positive thing you took away? What was one positive thing? I'll go, you're right. I missed that. That Nick is giving up all of his offense. Again, then what's your job? How's that positive when your coach has no job? Nick Sirianni doesn't have a job. He has no responsibilities. What coach in the league has no responsibilities? He has none. He won't make any of the position hires. That's going to be left to the coordinators. His offense is not going to be anywhere involved in the new coordinator or on defense. What is his responsibility? Look at some people in here comparing Nick Sirianni to Mike Tomlin. Really? In an organization that's had 3 coaches in 60 years, they let their coaches coach. He's the boss. Nick has no power. Mike Tomlin is being compared to by some idiots in here to Nick Sirianni. That's a disgrace. Nick Sirianni couldn't clean Mike Tomlin's shoes. How many times did we have Kevin Colbert on this program? 3. He's former general manager of the Steelers. And I happen to know Kevin Colbert 35 years. He was with me in Detroit. And we've been friends a ton. Remember what he used to say when he came on here and how he ran the Steelers front office? He was the senior vice president and general manager of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And you know what he would do? Mike Tomlin would walk into his office in the offseason and say, this is what I need. This is what I want. Go find them. And in the offseason, he would go find those players. Didn't know what they looked like. He would go around and look. Mike would bring in the names of assistant coaches he wanted to bring in, and he would. The organization would look at it with the Rooneys. Sure, Mike, whatever you need. And Mike Tomlin here's the difference between Mike Tomlin and Nick Sirianni. And for you guys to compare that, get this. Think about this. Mike Tomlin would go in and go, I want Alfredo Roberts, Carl Dunbar. I want Dunbar to be my D-line coach, and I want Alfredo Roberts to be my tight end coach. You know how I know this? They were teammates of mine, and I know how they were hired. So Mike goes to the general manager of the team, and at the time it was Kevin Colbert, and he goes, okay, if you want these guys, no problem, coach. It goes to the Rooneys. Rooneys sign off on it. Sure enough, Mike gets his guys. Mike's never been told no. That's why Mike didn't want to fire Canada, because that was his hire. Hey, I need these type of players. He never asked for a particular player, like a Joey Porter Jr. He wants this type of player. They know the makeup. I need a linebacker, I need a corner, and I need a safety. By the way, he was right on Porter Jr. He was right on Porter Jr. He goes, I want that kid. And sure enough, they went and they drafted him. And that's how Mike Tomlin runs. Nick Sirianni has none of that power. He ain't asking for assistant coaches. He ain't asking for personnel. And then you know what they do in the offseason? I see you, pretty dime. Agreed. You know what they do? And what did he tell you on this program? And once the season starts, I don't do interviews. I'm not seen publicly. I stay out of the way. That's coach's time too. Coach needs all his attention on his team. They don't get in the way. Mike Tomlin's not sitting up there with the general manager of the Steelers. That's the difference between the Steelers and the Eagles. Mike Tomlin runs his team. Same with John Harbaugh. John does all that too with Biscotti and Eric DeCosta. I want this assistant coach. Todd Monken was hired by John Harbaugh, not Eric DeCosta. Not by the owner. Those guys are coaches. You're missing the point. You guys are trying to compare a CEO style of coaching. They are the same style. They're just not the same guy. I mean, comparing people to people who have the power to do what they want. And you see, here's the difference in Baltimore and Pittsburgh. They control their own destiny. Nick doesn't. Because no matter how good he does, he can win a ton of games. And if they don't like the way it looks, they'll fire him. Comparing Nick Sirianni to Mike Tomlin. Yeah, or John Harbaugh. You shouldn't go there. There's no comparison. Only in the kind of style that you're talking about. Mike Tomlin's a coach. Nick Sirianni's a lapdog. You saw it at the press conference. By the way, our guy Tone's going to join us at 3:30. Angelo Cataldi will join us at 4:30. Randy Cross, the owner of 3 Super Bowl rings, will join us at 5:30 Eastern time. And we'll talk NFC Championship game with him and get his take on it. Mike Tomlin and Nick Sirianni. You can't be any dumber. Hey, don't forget the 2024 season is here. And during this time, the calendars are out for our great friends at Hooters. 9 of the girls featured in those calendars. $1 this weekend when it came to the divisional games. On Sunday, $1 off. I mean, you're going to be able to have yourself a great time. And I mean $1 off. It's going to go to local proceeds. $2 off actually on the purchase of each of these pitchers during the conference championship games on Sunday. Also, inside those calendars, $100 in coupons are there for you. All you have to do is purchase the calendars there. NortheastTutors.com. That's NortheastTutors.com. Lunch specials Monday through Friday, 11:30 to 3. Boneless wings. Happy hour Monday through Friday, 4 to 6. 6 items, $6. That's NortheastTutors.com. NortheastTutors.com. When you roll in, do me a favor. Tell them Big Sil sent you.
Football and Hooters, the perfect pair.
Any professional sports coach will tell you there's no substitution for preparation. At Malamut & Associates, that is a tenet by which we live. We prepare from day one for victory. Anything less is not acceptable.
Underdog Fantasy has a way for you to play alongside your favorite football team all season long with their fantasy pick'em game. You pick between 2 to 5 players, select whether they'll go higher or lower on one of their stats, then do what you usually do on a Sunday, watch the games. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single game by going 5 for 5. It's a fantasy game, and the Sports Betting Show wants you to get involved. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. When you sign up, use the promo code WIN, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
EAGLES, Eagles.
We have a brand new elite quarterback in the National Football League. Fabulous arm. And he'll be one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the National Football League by the end of the 24 season. Do you know who that'll be? By the way, let's make a little prediction. Who do you think is going to have a better 2024 season? Justin Herbert or Jalen Hurts? Who do you trust? A coach that went to 3 straight NFC title games? And a guy who has a quarterback who can throw the ball? And a guy who knows what he's doing? Or Nick Sirianni? There's not a chance in hell Jalen Hurts will have a better season than Justin Herbert. Nick Sirianni's not a better coach than Jim Harbaugh. And I don't give a fuck who he hires as a coordinator. That guy's going to win. Because he always does. And he takes no bullshit from anybody. Justin Herbert's going to have a sensational season. You know why? They hired the best quality coach they could possibly bring in for him. That's what you do for a franchise guy. They went from Brandon Staley, Nick Sirianni's cousin, to Jim Harbaugh. Your betting money is on Hurts having a better year next year than Justin Herbert with Jim Harbaugh as his coach. You're blinded. It's okay. I know you love your team, and you should, but you're out of your mind. I happen to agree with that, Mike. I think Justin Herbert has the potential to be a bigger talent than Josh Allen. You just need a coach that knows how to win. And that guy does. By the way, he ain't a college coach. He's a coach. 44-19-1, 3 straight NFC title games. What was it, 3 points away from winning the Super Bowl himself? He couldn't take the bullshit of Trent Baalke up in San Francisco, said, fuck it, goes wins the national title, turns Michigan into a better program than even under Bo Schembechler. You know, Bo Schembechler never finished higher than second at any time in his 28 years at Michigan. And Harbaugh wins a national title there. They hadn't won a national title in 80 years. Jalen or Herbert in 24. Good luck to seeing who you hire. I can't wait. This will be interesting because I know who the Chargers just hired. I know that guy. That guy's a great coach, man. There's no getting. Hey, is he a pain in the ass? Yes. Does he wear his welcome out? He's kind of like Torts. This guy ain't going to have no Brandon Staley choking the game in Jacksonville. He got coach. The Chargers went out and hired the best guy they possibly could and put him with the best coach they possibly could. I can't believe the Chargers struck gold here because that's not really who they are. But you see, they got a problem in LA. It's called an identity crisis. Now, Charger football is must watch. The most compelling story, there were two last year, was Dion and Harbaugh. Yeah, okay. You take Jalen all day and his 20 turnovers. We'll see. See, Jalen, if he's not given the right guy, he's going to have to do this himself. Herbert's got Harbaugh now. You got to understand Purdy, Kyle Shanahan, LaFleur, Jordan Love. Look at the quarterback, Andy Reid, Mahomes, Herbert, Jim Harbaugh. Do you not think there's a coincidence to that? Jalen has Nick Sirianni. And as I said to you earlier, that coach is not good enough for that kid. You know who that guy needs? Mike Vrabel. He needs a coach that's a coach that has power, not that shit we heard yesterday. I think that was absolutely one of the most embarrassing press conferences I've ever heard a coach go through. And I ain't spinning it any other way. Let me bring my guy Tone in here.
Big Sales, how we doing, sir?
How many times did you watch that press conference?
Watched it one and a half.
Twice.
I watched it 1.5 times. I didn't make it all the way through the second time. I got tired of it. I got tired of being lied to, so I just stopped watching it.
Okay, so a little bit of what your takeaway was, and I'm going to ask you the questions and some of the things that I took away from.
Right.
Just an overall synopsis there, Tone, of what you felt coming out of that thing.
I saw two men who were doing their best to spin a situation the best way they knew how. Specifically, Nick Sirianni, he looked like a shell of himself. He looked like somebody who lost everything and was given nothing. Howie Roseman, and
you mean like his balls were taken from him?
Yeah, pretty much. Howie Roseman, in typical Howie Roseman fashion, the spin artist, knows, doing his best to make a negative seem like a positive, doubling down on certain things he believes. It was so much that they said, but almost nothing that they said. And that's typical for the Philadelphia Eagles. Well, that's typical for those two gentlemen. Let's say that. Sooner or later, Nick Sirianni is going to have to learn sometimes less is more. And
you had 8 days for that, Tone.
And he puts his foot in his mouth so damn much. And all you got to do is just be direct. See, that's how you know he's not a good liar, because he's been asked to lie a lot in that organization. And look how he looks. He just appears like he's rambling, or like you can tell that he's not a good liar. And when you ask somebody to lie that's not a good liar, it's going to look that way. But overall, man, I just saw a team I saw two gentlemen that's doing their best to spin it. That's all I can say.
Here's Nick Sirianni. Brian Johnson is really a great coach. We just need a new direction.
All right, I'm glad you said that. Let's stay there. He's a great coach, but you let him go. So which is it, for one? But also, here's another thing, right? You fired Brian Johnson, yet all year you were screaming at the mountaintop, this is my game plan. You know, don't blame Brian. He's just doing what I tell him to do. Okay. So why did he get fired? Oh, because he got scapegoated, right? You chose self-preservation rather than to fight for your guy. Well, in actuality, Brian Johnson is not a Nick Sirianni guy. Howie hired Brian Johnson, and if Nick Sirianni had it his way, Kevin Patullo would have been the OC, not Brian Johnson. But Howie wanted Brian Johnson in that role. So maybe that's why Nick Sirianni didn't feel the need to fight for him, because the way he saw it, well, Brian Johnson's really not my guy. I didn't hire Brian Johnson.
Coaches look at it that way. They do.
Right. That's not his guy. So therefore, okay, easy fire. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Oh, no, here.
Yeah.
How about this one, Nick? I got a whole bunch of these. I'm gonna do the same to Angelo at 4:30. So I'm doing this to you too here. Already. We are changing some directions in the offensive scheme. What does that mean?
In other words, that's code for Nick Sirianni's no longer in control of his offense. That's code for that. And
or
also,
his assistants.
Yeah, or his assistants, right? Whoever they here's the funny thing about it all. Whoever they bring in on the offensive side, they're going to want to bring in their guy.
Absolutely. See, when you hire, you know what, Tone? I think sometimes I tried explaining this in the first hour. When people hear a name, they just look at the name. No, when you bring in experienced coordinators,
you got to think about what comes with that.
Wide receiver coaches, they bring running back coaches in. They bring in all kinds of different passing coordinators, quarterback coaches. Let's just start with their tree of coaches.
Let's just start with Vic Fangio. They brought him in. You don't think he's going to gut that Eagles defensive staff?
Absolutely. Tracy Rocker's in trouble.
Yeah. Tracy Rocker's in trouble. McDonald is in trouble. The DB coach. They're all in trouble. They're all in trouble. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't be surprised if any of them stay. Wouldn't be surprised at all.
How about this one here? Nick, our offense got stale. Code for it didn't evolve.
Oh, wow. That's news to me.
An indictment on him.
It's so funny, right? Everything that he screamed at the mountaintop was his doing failed. Yet he's still in the building. You claim that it's your job to instill the culture. Your culture failed you in the end. You claim this offense is your game plan. That failed you in the end. You claim demoting Sean Desai was your idea. That failed you in the end. Every bit that he had his fingerprints on failed him in the end. Every decision he made failed in the end. How is he still in the building? He's still in the building because they want to keep up appearances. They want to appear that too. He laid down, but on top of that, even further than that, they want to keep up appearances amongst their peers. It's important for the Philadelphia Eagles because I spoke to John about this last night, and I asked him directly. I said, "Do you believe this model that they're hitching their wagon to is sustainable? Do you think this model of Nick Sirianni just being a face and not being in control of his offense or defense, do you think it's sustainable?" John McMullen flat out said, "No, it's not."
It's not.
Basically, in so many words, and I'm paraphrasing, in so many words, John McMullen said that the clock just started ticking on Nick Sirianni.
Oh, yeah.
He doesn't see him. He doesn't see him past the contract at this point.
Let me continue here, Tone. And Money, let me just say this to you. Sill's just saying things that get Eagle fans pissed. These were answers they gave at the press conference. This is not made up. These are not these their answers. These are their answers I wrote down.
I don't even know why you respond to everybody, man.
I know, man.
Like there's some people who clearly are just living in.
I'm answering the question. I wrote their answers down.
Right. It's a transcript. You can look it up.
I got a transcript too from it. How about this? How about the most damning thing ever asked to a coach that I've ever heard in my entire life?
I know where you're going with this. That was.
What is your job?
That was hard to watch. That was hard to watch because I don't think he knows. And that's the sense I got. I got the vibe that he doesn't even know yet. All he knows is that he's playing ball and he's still the head coach. I don't think he knows.
What's your job?
That was one of the most damning aspects of that interview. And it was so funny how the reporter worded it too, because he said,
was it job description? What was your job description or something like that?
So what he said was, so if you guys are seeking new ideas on the offensive side and you guys are going to bring in another guy on the defensive side, if the offensive coordinator is going to run the offense and the defensive coordinator is going to run the defense,
something like that,
what's your role going to be? And his exact response was, well, I'm going to be the head coach.
So you answered it with the answered a question.
But guess what?
Question.
But guess what? If he would have said that and stuck that landing, I would have been like, all right, okay. But you know what he did instead? He said that, but he couldn't deal with the silence. So he had to keep talking. He's uncomfortable up there. Dude, he's uncomfortable being uncomfortable.
He is squirmish behind a mic.
You feel me? He's uncomfortable being uncomfortable.
Dude, watching those two guys up at the mic, I was like, I didn't believe a word that came out of that thing. It was like 35 minutes long, and I didn't believe one thing.
I couldn't believe
Howie now.
Yeah. Because I think you're going where I want to go next. Go ahead,
Howie. We have a lot of young, great players on the defensive side of the football. You know, Tone, I can only name 3.
Right. I can only name a few that I really care about what happens next. And obviously Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis. I care about
Milton
those
Williams,
guys.
and Josh Sweat. So there's 4.
Right.
The rest of them,
those are 4 guys I'm sure about. Right.
Yeah.
There's a couple stragglers that I'm curious about. I'm curious to see what Sidney Brown can become. I'm curious about that because he has a motor that I like.
Who's coaching him?
Big Fangio, apparently.
Okay.
Big Fangio, apparently.
Because
it ain't.
Hey, Vic will bring in a DB coach that will shake that ass up back there.
Yeah.
See, his assistants, Tone, are going to be the Vic Fangio name. Everyone's like, oh, he runs a 34, did it. And that's not what that guy's bringing. That guy's bringing quality coaches to coach your young players up.
And besides, let's be honest. In this day and age, no one's running a 4-3 or a 3-4 straight up. Most of the time, you're seeing nickel out there.
You're nickel 69.5% of the time you're a nickel.
Right.
I mean, okay, here, how about this one? Howie. I have a lot of belief in the Kobe Dean. He's a great player.
How do you know that? How does he know that? What did he see from the Kobe Dean to signify to him that he's a great player? Right? I would have had more respect if he said, yeah, obviously we didn't get as much on the linebacker position that we would have liked. The Kobe, we got to get him healthy. Once he gets healthy, he'll have an opportunity to prove that he belongs on the field. I would appreciate if he spoke like that. It's like he speaks about them as if they're his children, and he's trying to sell them to a college recruiter.
They are his. He picked them.
It's so fucking annoying.
I know, but Tone, know this.
Why is it so hard to just be firm with people?
Tone, but I want you to know this. When NFL players are in a locker room and you see the depth chart and you're playing, I'm going to put something out there to you. Milton Williams privately to his girlfriend or his wife, I don't know if he's married or what have you, he goes home at night and you know what he says? That fucker Jordan Davis is starting over me and he shouldn't. And the only reason he is because he was the 13th pick in the draft. It's the only reason because he's Howie's guy that he picked him, even though he was too, but he's the higher pick. Trust me, that's what players think and say when you're playing players that don't deserve the opportunity to start over you. Milton Williams should have started the back half after the Buffalo game. He should have started every game moving on.
Yeah, I agree. When I think about, just getting back to that linebacker position, Nakobe Dean has to stay healthy first and foremost. He can't show me or tell me nothing if he's not on the field. I don't care what you think he is, just how you drafted him. He has to be healthy to prove something. And also, I asked people this earlier today. Does Howie Roseman not only does he have too much faith in Nakobe Dean, but is he overestimating his commitment to the linebacker position? And my answer is yes.
No. I got the next one for you here.
He truly thinks.
Wait, Zach Cunningham had a great year.
Listen, Zach Cunningham. He called
Nakobe Dean a great talent and says that Zach Cunningham, dude, that's telling you right there.
Cunningham had an okay.
Address that linebacker position.
Cunningham had an okay year.
Dude, they don't think this is a talent issue.
I don't see how they can't. That's why, when I watch all of this, right, I ask myself, okay, what's their end game here with Nick Sirianni? What are they truly expecting him to? What's their expectations out of him, right? Because here's the thing. Nick Sirianni, he achieved a lot early. 3 straight years in the playoffs, made it to a Super Bowl, but obviously had a major setback in year 3. Okay, things happen, but it's how it happened. It's how it went down, right? The 7-game skid, basically losing the locker room, the hires and the fires and the demotions, and it was just catastrophic. And now he gets less power. He's no longer in control of his offense, or obviously not in control of the defense. So what's he doing here? How you keep him in the building because you clearly want to exercise some level of stability and signify strength. Okay, so are you looking at Nick Sirianni as a head coach that still requires grooming? Is that why you're keeping him here, and you want him to somehow grow into this coach that you expect him to be?
Are you asking
what's
a
your
rhetorical
vision?
Question?
I'm just trying to figure out what's their vision for him.
Yeah, you know it.
What's their vision? Let's be honest. Like, we always talk about what's the vision for the player. What's your vision for this coach? Because evidently he's not living up to expectations to the point where you
get along.
How far does that get you?
To a hot seat with a 667 win percentage.
Because I firmly believe he's on the fast track to losing his
He's
job.
on the Doug Peterson hot seat.
I don't know. Okay.
You're getting frustrated, Tone.
How do you know?
Because you know why? See, I think what's really happened is that the onion peel has been pulled back here a little bit on everybody and how these people actually operate. And you know what's funny? How about what I told you about the quality of how a guy answers his questions is always going to be indicative of how he uses his assets and what his equity is in the building. How he didn't use the 2017 Super Bowl win until the middle of the interview, until the very end, when someone went, hey, we know we can do it because we've done it before. And he went to that card, and I knew right then and there that's what's going to always give him the equity. See, Nick doesn't have that equity. Okay, Nick's the only guy in the building that has that equity.
He's the only one that can pull that card. You know what I mean?
Right. Nick can't pull that card. Howie can survive 1-6. Nick can't. Okay, let me throw this at you here. Here's Howie asked the question. It was about Desai. That was Nick's call to fire Desai.
As soon as he said,
"Oh wait, let me get the offense got stale." Nick fired Desai at 10-2, elevated him with Patricia, and then Nick's comment after that was, "Yeah, you can second guess things. That falls on me." Hey, dude, I'm sick of those kind of responses.
Yo, look. For one.
By the way, this is a transcript.
They're lying. You know what's so funny? You know what I thought was funny? The funniest part about it was the fact that he had the nerve to bring up Nick Sirianni giving up play calling as if that was his decision too.
Oh God.
You know what I mean? It's like he's trying to to dull every conspiracy. And when you come out and say, yeah, Nick came, Nick came to us saying, he had his concerns, and we backed him on it. And just how we backed him on his decision to give up play calling to Shane. It's like these slick ways to try to dull conspiracy. We know damn well, in my humble opinion, we know damn well he didn't give up play calling willingly. You advised him to do so. We know damn well he didn't fire Sean Desai. You advised him to do so. That's my honest opinion.
Let me go off on an off ramp before I get back to the transcript here.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think the impact that Jim Harbaugh has on Justin Herbert?
Oh, it's tremendous. It's tremendous. He's gonna he should actually get quality coaching. He should actually get quality coaching from this point forward. Jim Harbaugh, he wherever he goes, winning typically follows. So hopefully ownership, actually I put it this way. By ownership bringing in Harbaugh and him taking the job, on some level, ownership decided to stop playing.
Yep.
Ownership decided to
Can
stop
I
playing
tell you
football.
what they did, Tone? Because I covered that team for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what they did? They eliminated Howie Roseman's position. That's the only way they were going to get Jim in the building.
Because didn't they fire their GM in midseason as well?
Yeah, he's now the GM. Tom's been on our program. He's a friend of mine. He's now the GM of the Raiders.
Right. They haven't replaced that position yet.
And you said something the other day. Tom is really good at look at Derwin James, Joey Bosa, Herbert. I mean, he knows
he's good in free agency as well.
He's good in free agency, and he's really good in the draft. The Spanos family got in the way because you know what they did? They gave a lot of power to the general manager. A.J. Smith back in the day was the guy that fired Marty Schottenheimer. Marty was 14-2. Marty wanted to keep Drew Brees and trade Phillip Rivers. He wanted Brees was a Pro Bowler in San Diego.
But people forget
that organization had to make a pivot. And this is what you and I talked about. The biggest thing they did, they have an identity crisis in Los Angeles as it is. They needed to get, and the only way you were going to attract Jim Harbaugh
is by firing,
or even Belichick.
It's about firing your GM as well.
By firing people.
That was the only way. They already had their heart set on him. Exactly. They knew right when they fired their GM, when they made that decision, they knew who they wanted. They knew.
Absolutely. They did everything in their power
to make that job as sexy as possible
thing for Harbaugh.
Yep. They basically prepared the throne and made it real nice and shiny for him.
But they gave Herbert $50 million. See, Tone, this is what I give the Spanos family's clowns. They follow. Get this. They follow me on Twitter. The Chargers follow my Twitter page. Believe it or not, because I've had a good relationship with them. But the Spanos family just completely, Dean, they get in the way. But they pivoted and said, we just paid a guy $50 million.
We have to change.
The best coach we can.
Right. We can't afford.
Go out, pay a guy $50 million. They gave him the worst coaches they could possibly. No. They give him the worst experienced coaches they could possibly find.
Hubris. Pride, ego.
Nick Sirianni is Brandon Staley 2.0.
See, here's the difference, right? With the what is it? The Spanos? Is that what you said? The Spanos family? Here's the difference. At some point, they realized, yeah, we're not football people.
That's right.
That's the difference.
They did that.
That's the difference.
I know that family. That they had a come to Jesus conversation going.
Where does their money come from? If you don't mind me asking. If you don't know, what kind of
they're from Sacramento. They're from Sacramento. They're real estate people. Okay. And they bought the team from Gene Klein back in the day. And get this, they bought the team for $54 million. The team's worth right now $1.9 billion. So I mean, their investment has gone through the roof. However, moving to LA was a whole big thing, moving out of San Diego to Los Angeles, but they don't pay any rent. They don't have any concessions. Kroenke gets everything. So they're kind of like the only team in the league without a home stadium with really not a home fan base. They started in LA. You know what? Hey, you know why they're named the Chargers?
No, I actually don't.
Okay. Well, because back in the day, Barron Hilton owned the Chargers, and he called them and had the very first charge card for the hotels. And that charge card, the Hilton charge card that you had, and he called them the Chargers.
That's
and so
hilarious.
it started in Los Angeles.
That is hilarious.
It's
That's hilarious.
Really true.
I mean, it's a pretty cool name though. But
Yeah, it is. And they started in LA and then moved, but they had a come to Jesus conversation, man. That is so un-Spanish-like to land a guy like Jim Harbaugh.
And I respect it. I respect people who aren't afraid to deviate from their original process, especially when they feel like they've hit a wall. I don't like people who double down when you.
Look where they went from, Tone. Brandon Staley to Jim Harbaugh.
That's like going from a Fiat to a Ferrari.
Oh, right. Or a Yugo to a Ferrari. I mean, dude, you're kidding me. When I saw that last night, people started blowing my phone up, and they go, because I know Jim real well. He coached at University of San Diego,
right? And
he used a politician for that San Diego State job. He wanted that thing so bad. He was tied into the Spanoses then. And the Spanoses were thinking about hiring him then before Stanford. And I'm like, man, they got Jim Harbaugh. Holy shit, did they make a complete course change? But see, when I look at some of the comments that are being made out of this press conference, there's no course change, Tone.
I don't feel that. The only course, if anything, right?
Yeah, they took power away.
Right. All we really got from that is they took power away. And they're going to go in a different direction from a coordinator perspective. I'm curious to know your perspective on bringing a guy like Vic Fangio in. We haven't had a guy on defense calling plays that experienced since what?
Jim Schwartz.
Jim Schwartz. Because how many years has Jim Schwartz been in the NFL? How many years?
Long time. He was a head coach with the Lions for a bit.
Right, I remember those years. That's how I found out about him. The Lions head coach.
Here's my only concern. Again, Vic Fangio coming in and being the coordinator.
Okay? Yeah. Well, what's your thoughts on just him and just the experience? What's your thoughts on him?
How much are they going to let him run the defense?
And that's my question, because in my opinion, you don't bring a guy in like that, or he doesn't take that kind of job unless you're going to allow him to do his thing.
I think the Eagles are going to get busted for tampering here.
Oh yeah. It's funny. I was talking to Rob about that, and and I was talking to John about it too. Isn't that something that they would typically do right away? I'm curious because
what happened
so far they seem to be playing it cool so far.
You know what? I think they'll probably be like a 6th or 7th rounder. This is not going to be, because again, if the Dolphins were thinking about, which they were thinking about possibly replacing him, and there was a conversation,
because couldn't they block him?
I heard this. Get this. I heard Vic hated South Florida. I heard he hated it. He didn't want to live there.
But couldn't they block him though?
What's that?
Couldn't they block him?
No, completely. But what they did was they parted ways, and they wanted to see the landscape, because they wanted to bring a different guy in, because he hated living there.
Right.
His family hated living down there. It's not. Armando Salguero told me this. Okay. Is that Vic complained all the time about living in South Florida. He totally hated the community there, and he wanted to come back closer to home. And so this is what I feel. I think the Eagles this time made sure that nothing went sideways.
Regardless.
They had a deal on the table with his agent. Okay. And as soon as they parted ways, but he was still under contract when they were negotiating. Whether you were going to release him or not is not the point. The point is he was under contract when they were negotiating. That's tampering. That's the same kind of scenario that played out with Jonathan Gannon. He was negotiating with Arizona, and they caught Arizona, and Arizona and the Eagles had to do some switching up when it came to the draft picks, because there was some negotiations going on during the time when he was still under contract. That is tampering. Now, is it going to be a major violation, like a 3rd rounder? I don't think so, because probably the Dolphins and Stephen Ross probably wanted to get out from that deal. Right. So it'll probably be like a 6th or 7th rounder, something like that.
And that's what I was trying to figure out, right? Like, I mean, because obviously it was a setup, but also they were paying him a lot of money too.
Oh, highest paid DC in the league.
And for them to part ways, I naturally assumed that they could care less what happened after that, because again, they allowed.
If I get an extra pick, Tone, I'm gonna file for it.
Okay,
like Arizona did.
So that's how it works.
The Eagles did for Arizona.
Right. Okay, so that's how it works. The team has to file, and then the league has to investigate.
And then what they do is both teams will have their company press release that both did. Remember how we was reading? from that press release to Mike Florio.
Right.
And they went back and forth, and it was a prepared statement. So that I don't think this is going to be as egregious, but I do think that he was under contract because as soon as he parted ways the next day, he had a contract in front of him.
Right. I mean, that's not normal.
No, it's not normal. Look at how many coordinators that you're going through now on the offensive side. You knew who you were going to get.
And it's so funny. It's so funny we talk about this because
he wanted to come here.
Right. And here's the thing, right? You said something interesting, how we looked at it, like how they looked at it like this. We're going to get our guy no matter what.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly what they felt. If we got to deal with a tampering charge, so be it. We're going to get the DC we want. And that's kind of who they've been wanting over the past few years. They've just been trying to find these off-brand versions. Now they got the real McCoy in. They get, they're actually going to start getting the water from the well.
Why they want Vic?
Yeah, help me understand what's their infatuation with Vic Fangio, in your opinion.
Vic doesn't have anything to do with and doesn't really give a shit about personnel. He doesn't ask for players. He puts a scheme together and says, I need the type of player here, here, here. And it's going to be up to Howie to find that guy to plug him in. So there's certain coaches that will do this. I want Dallas Turner from Alabama. Or I want, like Nick Sirianni saying, I'm trading up because I love Will Anderson. And I see an intangible in that player. Vic, there's some coordinators that the old school guys, they believe in their scheme so much. Just give me the type of player that looks like that. And we'll go with that.
So they believe in archetypes, not actual.
And that's kind of the coordinators that they like in Philly, is the guys that look like that.
Because financially, it's easier to
cheaper to balance your cap too.
Cheaper.
Right. If I can get a guy that looks like Michael Parsons, I don't have to really pay Michael Parsons 30, but I get a guy like Hassan Reddick that looks like him.
Right.
I mean, to me, Hassan Reddick is a off version of Michael Parsons. I get the same production out of him. Maybe one guy does something better. He covers the passes better, but Hassan rushes the passer better. So you look at it and you got a trade-off and you go, yeah, but I'm paying 15 here. Cowboys are going to pay 30. So you see what I'm saying, Tone? You look at it like, does that guy look like that guy?
Right.
It's cheaper.
It is cheaper.
And that's how they've operated on defense.
And in theory, it's not terrible. In theory, it's not terrible. But where in my opinion, where they've gone wrong.
But you have to change that out every 2 years, though.
Right. And in my opinion, where they go wrong is the fact that because look, every position whenever you're balancing the cap, you got to place values on positions. You have to. It's just the way it works. But where the Eagles go wrong is they've taken it too far with how they value the linebacker position. They've taken it too far with how they value safety. They put all their eggs in a defensive line basket, and I get it, but maybe you should invest a teeny bit more, a few extra million in the linebacker position. Maybe. I don't know.
Your cap, you got a $50 million quarterback now.
Right.
Still, the beautiful thing about Roseman is those cap hits. I don't really care about the $50 million. I care about the cap hits.
Right.
And he did a brilliant job on that. That's the only reason I want him in the building.
Right. The cap hits.
Because I don't think he's bad at pro personnel. I think he's good at scouring rosters and finding guys who are undervalued. And I think he's great at putting contracts together and jumping ahead of the gun and getting guys at hometown discounts. I think he's good at that. But when it comes to drafting, I think he's brutal. I think they do a right thing when it comes to the lines. They've made a commitment in that since the owner owned the team, since Norman Braman. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of things that they do, and it's so predictable. It's just predictable. By the way, before I go on here, I'm going to get to Jalen here in a minute and what Nick and Howie said about him. Players can be overrated. Is a 667 win percentage and 3 playoff appearances in a row. And when you watch a guy go 1-6 down the line this last year, is Nick Sirianni overrated as a coach?
Oh, it's entirely possible that Nick Sirianni is overrated. I mean, look, if we're you kind of laid it out pretty perfectly. If we can call players overrated,
like, do you think Michael Parsons is overrated? Like, you can run at him, Tony. He's not very physical.
I'll put it to you this way, right? Because I've never put Michael Parsons in the class of me personally. I've never put him in the class of a Myles Garrett or a TJ Watt. I've never have. I feel like I've always had him properly rated, just how I view it. So I can understand if someone's saying he is overrated when you see him in big games like that Green Bay game and he didn't get a single sack or a quarterback hit, right? That's how is that possible? You're supposed to be a game wrecker.
Pressure.
You're supposed to be a game wrecker. You're supposed to be the linchpin on that defensive side. They go through you. And neither you or DeMarcus Lawrence were able to register a sack on Jordan Love on that average Green Bay offensive line, a young offensive line at that, maybe a veteran sprinkled here and there. But for the most part, that should have been food for you guys. So I think Micah Parsons in a way is overrated in terms of his overall impact on the game, especially when it matters most. You know what I mean? He has limitations.
Really good talent.
I think he's a tremendous talent. But at the end of the day, come on, man.
Yeah.
Like you got to show up in those games.
I'll tell you what, I see Reddick more show up in games than I do Parsons showing up in games. I do. I mean, look, he had a rough one down the back stretches, that entire defense, because they were not using him correctly, I think.
Yeah.
But
how do you drop Hassan running back 7 to 10 times? That doesn't make any sense.
Practice. Let me go here with you. So this question was asked 3 different ways. Hurts and Brian Johnson asked him about someone asked a question, and I heard it, and he goes, hey, the involvement, did you go to Jalen and tell Jalen about Brian Johnson being replaced? And Nick went into this diatribe that was like this soliloquy where, hey, we made all these decisions, and it was just like blah, blah, blah noise. And then he was asked again the question about Brian Johnson. How did Jalen feel? You'll have to ask him. So it was almost like they tried to avoid the question as much as possible. Did Jalen have a problem? Did Jalen have a problem with Brian Johnson being fired, or did he not have a problem? Or do the Eagles not want to answer that question?
Look, what
do you think? Do you think Jalen? I find it hard that Jalen has a friend for a life, and Jalen's going to blame Brian Johnson for all that shit that went on. When we hear Nick go, the offense got stale. He did not evolve the offense. It was his offense. It was the same players from a year ago. And then Jalen's going to sit there and go, you blame Brian for that? That's my friend. I think Jalen had a problem with it.
I wouldn't be surprised if Jalen looked at that situation kind of sideways, like,
I think he did now.
You know what I mean? But
I came away from that press conference thinking that Jalen has an ass with that.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Jalen had questions about that decision.
But he's not going to say it publicly.
Now, I will say this, though. Jalen also strikes me as the kind of guy that, hey, it is what it is. Business is business. He strikes me that kind of guy.
He's going to be pissed, but he's not going to go public and show his hand.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if Jalen, behind the scenes was like, damn, this wasn't even Brian.
You blamed him for all this shit?
Wow. Like,
this is my fault and your fault, Nick. It's not just Brian's fault. And then when asked him saying that publicly, hey, man, this is really a tough call here, especially when you're losing really quality people. And then you have, what's his name, going, Brian Johnson's a great coach. So Brian Johnson's a great coach, but you fired him and you didn't consult Jalen, and Jalen had an ass with it, and he's a great I just found that to be a convoluted answer. And the way that they went around the business on making sure that they didn't answer that in the right way.
For me, I don't know. Maybe I just know how to answer certain questions, and I don't really get flustered. But if you ask me, what went into the whole Brian Johnson firing, my response simply would be, well, look, Brian's is a good man. During his time here, we had some great moments of success. But overall, we felt it was time to go in a different direction. I'm sure Brian's going to land on his feet. Like it's very easy to get through certain.
Don't sound like you're making sense, because that guy doesn't.
I'm telling you, man. Like I listen to the reporters' questions, because I think sometimes it's hard to hear them, but like I hear their questions and I'm like, okay, I know how.
You learn a lot from the question,
right? And I'm like, okay, I know how I answer that. And
remember then when you're asking a question, you're looking for the response and the human response, not just the words they're saying.
Exactly.
And their mannerisms.
Mm-hmm.
And Nick has awful mannerisms, because when he doesn't want to answer, watch this. Here's his profile. Okay. Here's a profile that he has. The closest sores. Men have 23, women have 24 of them. They have body language that they have. And his is this. When he doesn't like a question, he goes on those soliloquies. And he over-explains
whenever you catch him, he starts over-explaining.
Yeah, because you know what he's doing? He's gathering his thoughts.
That's exactly
while
what
he's
he's doing.
coming up with the bullshit that here's a great, always remember this, Tom, when you ask a question and someone says, hey, so what do you make of this? And the guy answers the question and he goes, well, when you look at this team, that is a bridge for you to gather yourself while you're thinking about what the Ravens are or the Niners are, to give you a chance to gather.
There's an art. There's an art to expressing yourself.
Yes.
And you have to. So you use certain words as a bridge so you can gather your thoughts. Like if you ask me a question,
they're actually called pantomimes.
Right. You ask me a question, I say, it's funny you asked that question.
Yes.
Then that's exactly what that is.
It helps you gather your thought.
It helps you gather your thoughts.
But
I do it all the time.
Yeah, no.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. How about this one here? Okay, so if I told you that a coach had a 670 win percentage and has been to the playoffs 3 times, has a quarterback who finished second in the MVP voting, last year, 2 coaches in the last 2 years that have gone on to be head football coaches, and Nick saying this, I have to reprove myself. And you won 11 games this year. Dude.
It tells you everything, and it tells you everything about how they it tells you everything about how they view who's responsible for what. Because based on everything you said, Nick Sirianni should be okay, right? He should be okay. But guess what? The fact of the matter is they don't see him as the one responsible for their recent success. They don't. They clearly see him as somebody that requires a bit more attention. They see him as they have to see him as a liability in a way. And that's why they're bringing all these different people in to try to make sure their investment in him looks legit. But the fact of the matter is, Nick Sirianni has no more power. And I have a hard time seeing the bright side of this relationship. I have a hard time.
Howie was asked the question, why'd you bring Nick back? That was asked
that was the most direct way you guys asked that question.
That was a direct question, and it was a very subtly low-asked question in that building.
Very low brow, low key.
Here's Howie. We're bringing Nick back because we have confidence in him.
Hey.
Or do you have confidence in that he'll do what he's told?
I think it's the latter.
I'm sorry, I had to ask that.
But listen, here's the thing, though, right? You see how simple and concise that answer was?
Yeah.
Even if you agree or disagree or you have questions about it. Hey, we brought him back because we have confidence in him. Okay, all right. I can respect the direct answer. You know what I'm saying? I can respect it, even if I don't agree with it, even if I think you're lying. Hey, it was concise, it was to the point. You said what you said, and all I can do is take it. You know what I'm saying?
How about this one? Howie was asked the question and said that the talent on the team, he said, the cupboard is not bare by far.
Yeah, he's wrong. He's wrong.
Well, you know what he's telling you?
He's basically telling you
coaching.
He's basically telling you he didn't feel they had personnel issues.
Yeah.
That's basically what he's saying.
He's telling you they had no personnel issues, that the cupboard's full.
What is that, on offense only?
Whoa, what are you trying to do? Dissect it here a little bit here? I mean, because to me, I heard you guys talking. Well, offense is okay. No, man, this is about a 53-man roster.
No, you're right.
About half the team, because that was your problem this year, was only talking about half the team. The rest of the team was what let you down. That 53-man roster, you're only as strong as the weakest link on. Jimmy told me this, and get this, Tone. This is how he built teams. Now, no salary cap.
Right.
It's different. But he said, I wasn't trying to replace the top end of my roster. I was trying to replace the bottom 10% of my roster every day, because I'm only going to be as strong as the weakest link on my roster. If the bottom 53 guy is the best 53rd guy in the league, my roster's better than yours.
Do you believe that's when we're wrong with the Eagles this year? The fact that they kind of shortchanged themselves on the back end. They became top heavy.
They're top heavy.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, look at where the money is. How about this one? All position coaches right now are being, this is to your point, all position coaches are being evaluated. We're going through that right now. You know what that means? You know what that means? Nick has no power whatsoever. These coordinators are bringing their coaches in.
Of course. Like, that's why I'm curious to know which direction they go in when it comes
or what
to
his job is, right?
I'm curious to know which direction they're going with the OC, because do you think they're more likely to go experienced, or they're more likely to go young, bright, and bushy tailed? Like, how do you think they're going to approach this? Because they've already gone experience on these.
A tailor-made OC. And what I mean by that is
an OC who's capable of who's molding
an offense around Jalen, and get this. Here's what I don't want. I don't want an offensive coordinator set in his ways.
Right. Okay.
And sometimes that comes with experience, but then you sacrifice experienced OCs with experienced position coaches. So you've got to have a trade-off here. You want some experience, Tone, but what you also want is guys got to be able to look, every quarterback in the league's different.
Mm-hmm.
Jalen, Allen, and Lamar I'll use. You got to tailor-make offenses completely different than you do for Joe Burrow and Mahomes and for
Herbert.
The offense in Los Angeles for Justin Herbert couldn't work in Philadelphia.
Yeah, it's two different. It's completely two different skill sets.
You got a guy that knows that dynamic,
right?
That's able to put that kind of stuff together. Now, you know what that means? Different position coaches, less control from the front office. You're not going to have say in analytics. Dude, these coordinators are not going to sit there and listen to Anna. You're basically going back to this 2017 model.
So let me ask you,
Doug and Jim Schwartz and Frank.
So that's interesting, because do you think you know how we said the only way the Eagles can kind of get out of the situations is if they have a course change or pivot a little bit? Do you think that's partially what they're doing they're partially doing that without completely severing ties? Yes, exactly. They're basically doing that, but it's going to be at Nick's expense.
They're taking more control of the team by allowing their hires of coordinators to come in. And I told you yesterday.
But here's the thing, right? Isn't that sad?
The more you close the gap on Nick and his last year, Nick had this much to say. Now he has this much to say.
Isn't that sad, though, that you're willing to give more autonomy to Vic Fangio and the OC you're bringing in than your own head coach? You trust them to turn it around more so than the guy that's in the building.
And Hurts.
It's not a good look.
There's three dudes they're counting on to turn this around. The two coordinators and Hurts.
Mm-hmm. Because they clearly don't have faith in Sirianni's ability to turn it around, or bring in the people necessary to do so. You
know why they like him? They like him because they have to like him. If that thing was 6-11, he'd be out.
Yeah.
The only thing that saved him is that he did what they told him to do during the year. Think about that. Because if he had really made that call, dude, how many people do this, Tone? Let me put Matt Patricia in. Defense gets worse. Let me fire the coordinator 10-2. Let me have my quarterback I just paid $50 million regress.
Mm-hmm.
Let me have an offense who everyone had career numbers, and yet we were 1-6 down the stretch. You had a defense that fell completely apart. The only reason you keep that job is because somebody was pulling the strings.
In any other situation, though, all those things that we talked about are grounds to get fired.
Right, but you know what's not? These are all your guys' call.
So what happens? So going forward, so if he has less power going forward, like is everything going to be their call from that point forward? You get where I'm going? Like, okay, if he has less power now, how is everything go through these guys going forward? It's just how. So how
nothing's changed?
What is he being held accountable for then?
He's not.
So
the record. The record.
Okay, there we go. All right, see, that's what I'm trying to figure out. Okay, so
the record.
The only thing he's been held accountable for is the win-loss column.
Right.
And if that's not matching up, he's out the door.
He's out the door because he has no other job.
Got it. Okay. All right. That's
what I'm thinking about that. The only reason he kept the job is because they won 11 games. He didn't keep the job because of decision making.
He didn't keep the job because of the quarterback development. He didn't keep the job because of playoff wins. He didn't
think about this. Seriously, the only thing that was a positive in Sirianni's 2023 year
was the one-loss column.
Was the one-loss record. Outside of that, every decision they made was wrong.
Because every time Nick was criticized or anything was asked about Nick, Howie kept resorting back to, 3 playoff appearances in a row, a 60% plus win percentage or whatever. Like, he kept doubling down on these metrics to prove Nick Sirianni's value. But other than that, I don't think he indicated anything outside of those metrics what his value is.
And don't forget, I know what I'm doing because
I'm Howie Roseman.
17 Super Bowl. Hey, drop that nugget on you there.
Oh, all right, my God, man.
I'm going to get Angelo Cataldi on here in a minute.
Yes, sir.
Great
it's always fun.
Hey, man, I'm glad you saw that. And by the way, man, no disrespect to anybody, but I'm not going to say anything because you're here. But I will say this: I don't give a shit if those guys were humbled.
It's funny. Real quick, it's funny you say that because
hey, I don't care how you feeling, kid.
No, like he looked like I don't care either, by the way. But let's be honest. Nick looked like somebody took his basketball.
Oh no, he looked like he had a red fanny
and put it on the top shelf.
Hey, your pop took the switch out, took it off the tree, and took it off the willow. And he came over and drop your pants there. Nick looks like he's got a couple swats across the backside there, man. And he was biting on a bone. Hey, sorry, I've been there a little bit.
Oh,
okay,
man.
I'm just saying, man. I mean, hey,
Lord
Sister Judith Marjorie Fish. She used to paddle me in Catholic High. And okay, she'd have this Marjorie Fish. She had these gigantic arms. She came from like a prison, and she was a nun.
What?
She used to hollow out her paddle, and she used to hollow it out, and all you would hear is poof.
Doesn't that make it go faster?
Like bees hitting you.
Hollowing it out. Doesn't that make it go faster? Like it catches the air.
Go faster right through the air, man. And then hit your ass, man. Oh boy, I tell you what, it shook you like you were bit by bees. All right, Tone, I appreciate it, brother. Thank you, my friend.
Sir. Yes, sir.
You got it. All right. We are going to have our friend Angelo Cataldi join us. Please hit the like button. Keep it here, National Football Show.
Football and Hooters, the perfect pair.
Any professional sports coach will tell you there's no substitution for preparation. At Malamut & Associates, that is a tenet by which we live. We prepare from day one for victory. Anything less is not acceptable.
Underdog Fantasy has a way for you to play alongside your favorite football team all season long with their fantasy pick'em game. You pick between 2 to 5 players, select whether they'll go higher or lower on one of their stats, then do what you usually do on a Sunday. Watch the games. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single game by going 5 for 5. It's a fantasy game, and the sports betting show wants you to get involved. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. When you sign up, use the promo code WIN, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Big Sales National Football Show. Appreciate you coming aboard. Angelo Cataldi's going to join us here in a couple minutes, and we'll get his thoughts on the fireside chat. I just saw that Chuck Pagano, former head coach of the Colts and former coach of mine, was on with Pat McAfee. I just reached out to him, and I'm going to get him on because he's very good friends with Vic Fangio, and he knows him very well. And I knew his brother, John Pagano, too, who was also a coordinator in the NFL and was the coordinator of the Chargers at one time. And he's very well connected. And we'll bring him on because I think he's actually worked with Vic Fangio. And those guys work together a little bit. Vic Fangio may have actually worked for Chuck when Chuck was a head football coach. So I'm working on that. So we'll get him on. Cancer survivor. Hey, Yale, you want to hear a crazy story? So Chuck Pagano, on Jimmy Johnson's coaching staff at the University of Miami, when we had all those great coaches who went on to coach the Dallas Cowboys and win those 3 Super Bowls, and they won a national championship at Miami, obviously. Do you know who our GAs were, Yale? Check this out. You know who a GA is? Those are guys that come in and kind of get coaches coffee. They break down game film. They pass out playbooks, game plans. They do really the grunt work. And then they do bed checks when the players are on the road or when you are at home, and the coaches will come by to do bed checks. Do you know who our GA graduate assistants were? Thank you. You know who our graduate assistants were? Tommy Tuberville and Chuck Pagano. Those were the guys that were coming by and checking bed checks. That's how great assistant coaches Jimmy had. His GAs were former NFL and college football coaches that would go on and do things. One's a senator now. This guy Tommy Tuberville he's a U.S. senator. He was a former Auburn coach. Coached at Miami I love Coach Tuberville. You know, politics aside, he was phenomenal with me. And so was Coach Pagano. I got a great picture of all of us together. I mean, that was some coaching staff. Some of the greatest coaches of all time in college football history. But Jimmy came on here numerous times and told you guys this. You're not going to be successful if you don't have really great coaches and assistant coaches. And this is why they're going down the line of hiring qualified coordinators. That's the thing listen, I'll tell you what. Let's take Nick out of the conversation for a second. And here's you know what? I asked you guys about the positives that came out of this. And Tone kind of broached it too. Here's the positive. If you're going to bring quality coordinators in, and you're going to bring in coordinators that are going to have a say in what kind of scheme you're going to run, well, the only way you can run their scheme is with their style of coaches at their positions. That's why when Nick came out today and said, or yesterday, came out and said that our position coaches right now that we have under contract, everything's being evaluated right now. That means this. You're going to have a meeting with those coordinators. And if those coordinators feel it that you're in the best interest for them and that you can execute their game plan, you're staying. You know what? It's almost like they're going to be it's almost like 2 head coaches are being hired in Philly. And it's almost like every one of those position coaches, Nick's not going to have a say if they're staying or not. Think about that. Just think about that for a second. He's not going to have any say in the. That's what you take away from that. Yeah, we're still evaluating, whether or not our coaches and our assistants, they're telling you right there, if these coordinators don't want them, they're not here. And that means Nick has to fire people that he doesn't want to fire. That means he has no power. That means he has no power. Now, I would find it shocking that an O coordinator would not want Jeff Stoutland in the building. Stoutland, Bill Callahan, guys like that are the best offensive line coaches in the NFL. Hey, maybe Jeff Stoutland doesn't want it. Now, again, I would have to think. Kyle goes, is Stoutland safe? I would have to think that when they're interviewing coordinators, one of the conversations in there is that, listen, I know you guys want to bring in your own coaching staff and you guys want to bring in the people that you want to execute your offensive game plan and the approach. But we want to Jeff Stoutland. Okay? That would be my take. Well, I'll just tell you this. That thing we saw yesterday was an abomination. It was just it was 35 minutes of lying. I called it the fireside chat. It was a little bit of a fireside chat. And I could not wait for Angelo Cataldi. People have been killing me here because guess why? I've called your guy a puppet. He's called this guy a puppet. And remember, folks, Philadelphia Sports Talk Bible. You want to know how to get under Philadelphia sports fans' skin? Page 133. Here he is right here. Angelo, I could not wait for you.
Well, I got to tell you, Dan, I was so excited about this news conference. We waited 2 weeks for it because there was 3 inches of snow on the ground. We couldn't hold it then. There's all this speculation, but nobody emerges from the Eagles' ivory tower for almost 2 weeks. And I wrote on my blog, on my website, angelocatali.com, I wrote, I know this for sure because I've been watching these things for a long time with the Jeff Lurie, Howie Roseman organization. I said, make sure you bring your boots because they're going to pile the manure high. Now, there are no boots big enough to get through the manure you were shoveled yesterday. This was some of the most outrageous. Here's the great part of that whole news coverage, Dan. At the end of it, you went, why did they keep Sirianni? Wait a minute, hold on. He's not going to be involved in the offense anymore. They're bringing in a new guy because they're on the record saying that his offense, after 3 years, got stale. Right? He had no new ideas after 3 years. And he was brought in as an offensive innovator. All right. He's not going to do defense. He may show up at a meeting once in a while, but they're not going to do that. And he's on the record saying, he doesn't get involved in special teams. So he's there for the culture, right? The culture is he's now, they're calling him the CEO, right? And I'm going, well, the culture, they fell apart.
They were 1-6.
They fell apart. In Troy Aikman in the playoff game said they were dead before they started the game. They were dead. They couldn't tackle. They didn't care. They were done. Isn't that the culture?
That's him.
Why is he back there? Why is Nick Sirianni getting a 4th year when he has proven himself to be a failure in the biggest moment of the season?
I want to throw these at you, Angelo. I have written down a couple of responses from Nick and from Howie, and I want to get your takes on this.
Sure.
You had 8 days for that, and I was with you there. I'm like, okay, there were so many lies. One of the first things he says, we're changing some direction in our offensive scheme. Brian Johnson was a great coach, but we're looking for new direction.
Time out. Only the Eagles, right, have the gall, the unmitigated gall, Dan Sileo, to fire a man and then say he was great. If he's not great, you should have named the head coach. Great. 10 times in the playoff game. 10 times on blitzes. A blitzer got through with no block. Absolutely unattended shot right at the quarterback. This is great coaching. This is what we're supposed to believe. You don't even believe it.
Of course I don't. Not at all.
They fired him and then said he was great.
He's a great coach. What was the exact phrasing of this? And how about this one here? Angelo, in all of your years, covering even Rich Kotite or anybody that's ever been in that position to be the Eagles coach, have you ever heard a question from a reporter to a head coach? What's your job?
Yeah, that was the right question. It was the wrong answer. Because there is no answer. Once you have removed him from the offensive equation, once he is not part of the offense, because it was a failure by his own admission, it got stale. Once you've taken him out of that, and we know he has no expertise in defense, there's no reason for him to be here. None. No reason. Now, you know where this is going, Dan. They are going to have a lousy season next season. I hate to be the bearer of bad tidings. They're going to have a losing season next year. They're going to lose more games than they win, and they're going to fire Nick Sirianni. And every one of you out there who are somehow behind him, you will all suddenly realize that they wasted a year of your life.
Absolutely.
They wasted 1 year of your life. They could have brought in somebody who knows football like Mike Vrabel and redo the whole thing. There's one reason why Nick Sirianni is still here. And if people want to give me the backlash, come and get it, all right? Because he's a puppet.
He kissed the ring. Angelo, he kissed the ring.
I have high-definition television, and I watched the news conference. And Sirianni, in the role of Pinocchio, was right there as a puppet. And he said it was entirely his decision to demote Desai and bring in Patricia. God, strike me down dead right this second if I'm not saying that that's BS.
Total BS.
That had all the fingerprints of Lurie and
I want to lead you with that here to this, Angelo, because Howie was asked that, and I wrote it down here off the transcript. Howie said that was Nick's call. Okay, mistake number 758. Howie was asked the question about the talent on defense, and I'm going to tie this in. Right. He said this: we have a lot of great young talent on defense. And I said, like who? And then they went, I love Nakobe Dean. I'm like, Nakobe Dean can't stay healthy, and he's proven absolutely nothing. Then they went, Zach Cunningham had a great year. Yeah. And so my point is to you now here, Angelo. So what Howie is basically telling you is this is not a personnel issue.
Right.
This is a coaching issue.
Right.
How does Sirianni have the job?
There's no good reason. It's not logical. It's not logical, Dan. You understand? He's saying, here's the next thing. All right, so let's just say that it was Sirianni's decision to go from Desai to Patricia, right? Who brought Patricia into the organization? Sirianni or the bosses? The bosses did. The bosses did. Why? Because he was a plan B. If something went wrong on defense, they had the guy there to bring in. If I was still on the air, based on what I've now witnessed, Dan Sileo, I would be holding a Matt Patricia Appreciation Day at WIP Radio, and I'll tell you why. Because if that hack was not on the sideline 6 years ago, when the Eagles faced the Patriots in Super Bowl 52, the Eagles would have lost. And I'm also have a call into the Vatican, because watching Howie Roseman and watching this team operate, I am suggesting to the Pope that Nick Foles and Doug Peterson be considered for sainthood, because that's two miracles, one for each of them, that they won that championship with that ownership. They don't have a clue what they're doing. Do you understand, Dan?
Yeah.
They don't have a clue. And
It's
they
deflected everything.
We're going to look like that.
They deflected everything yesterday, Angelo.
Oh, it was awful. It was just such BS. And this would have even happened if they still had the PR guy they used to have there. What's his name? I forgot his name now. But the guys they got now, they're just Derek Boyko is the great PR guy. The people they got there now are typical PR mouthpiece flacks, and they don't care about the truth. But here's the problem. It's Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The fans know. The fans who are smart enough to watch this debacle, they know what happened. They saw it as it happened. They knew it was over before the team knew it was over. And what they were sold yesterday was bullshit. I'll say it. And I know I could say, it was bullshit. All of it. It was a disgrace. Shame on every one of them that they did that to the fans of this city. The fans deserve better than what they got yesterday. A lot better.
Amen to you on this, Angelo. This is awesome. Let me throw this at you here. They were asked a question, both of them, about the firing of Brian Johnson. And I don't know if you read into this like I did. Yeah. To me, they were asked, how did Jalen take it? And Nick went on some soliloquy, and I was like, dude, just answer the freaking thing, man. And then Howie had to jump in because he had to save him because this guy's so uncomfortable behind the mic. Right. Then he was asked the third time, you'll have to ask Jalen. I'm wondering, maybe that's what the rub was between Nick and the owners, that, get this, you fired a guy and you blamed that guy for all of your problem with the offense going stale. You're meddling in the offense. You not putting proper people in proper positions to succeed on defense, and you're blaming Brian Johnson? Yeah. Shit, Angelo. I mean, at the end of the day here, I don't know if Brian Johnson's a good coach or not a good coach. All I know is this guy never had a chance of succeeding because they were constantly meddling.
I have no idea who did what on that offense, but it was a mess by the end of the season. Right? Here's what I can tell you. And this is another thing. I've had a lot of a debate with my emailers all the time, or constantly emailing me. And I give almost none of the blame to Jalen Hurts. He did not have a good season. He made bad decisions. Watch what he did. How many times in a game did he drop back and then have to flush out of the pocket and throw the ball away? How many times? I would wager more than any other team in the NFL.
He was blitzed the most.
Games, all right? More than any other. Why? Because they didn't have plays that played to the strength of the offense and exposed the weaknesses of the defense. They game planned horribly, all right? No, don't blame Hurts. If you're out there, don't blame Hurts. He showed you what he could do the year before when Shane Steichen was called the plays. He showed you what he could do when he had good coaching. Put the guy with some good coaches. Brian, I don't think Johnson was a good coach. But I can't be sure.
Right.
Because I don't know how involved Sirianni was. The fact that Sirianni has removed himself from the equation suggests to me he demoted himself. He said, I clearly was not getting what I needed to get out of my offense, so I'm demoting myself away from the offense. So here's what he's done in 3 years. He took away his own play calling. He knows he wasn't good at that. Then he took away now his powers over the offense. He never had powers over the defense, and he's still a head coach. How does any of that make sense?
It just doesn't make sense unless one thing that you taught me. The control factor in that building is the most important thing for management, for them to be able to run the team the way they see fit. If they have that, they're comfortable with him, because as long as he's a guy that kisses the Pope's ring, Angelo, he's the perfect kind of coach, because you can't have a guy walking in. And to your point, look at what the Chargers just did. They changed course direction. They were so centric on their GMs, A.J. Smith or having Tom Telesco in there, that the Spanos family fired all of that. They hired a guy who they just paid $50 million at the quarterback, the best possible candidate for him, to move him to the next direction. You leave Nick Sirianni for Jalen Hurts. How comfortable and confident are you that they're going to put the proper people around Jalen to elevate his game?
That's a very, very good question, Dan. And I can only say this, all right? The fact that within a day, they were back in touch with Vic Fangio and were doing a deal for defensive coordinator. Why do you think that is? Well, Fangio this year in Miami had, according to, this is just yards gained against his defense, they were 19th, all right? Miami shed no tears when Vic Fangio said he wanted to come back here. None. Fangio was a consultant to the Eagles during the playoffs, including that Super Bowl debacle in the second half. Fangio's here for one reason, because Roseman and Lurie like the style, the scheme he has defensively, which is bend but don't break. It's we'll give you the short stuff. We're preventing against big plays. Fangio is only back because that's the scheme they want to run. It's not Sirianni's scheme. That's the scheme of the owner and the general manager. That's why he's here. So whoever they bring in for the offensive coordinator, he's going to be the guy that they want to, exactly what they want to run offensively. It comes from the top. Always comes from the top. This has never been as much an owner GM run team as it is right now, with a coach in place who's a total puppet for whatever they want him to do, and a mouthpiece who's willing to look into the camera like he did yesterday and lie, just blatant lie to keep his job. This is the difference between him and Peterson. When it got to push or shove with Peterson, he said, no, I want to do it my way. I want a Super Bowl. I deserve that chance. And they said, get out. And then Sirianni came in last week and they said, what are you going to do? And he goes, whatever you need. I'm here to serve you, my Lord. And he would do whatever they tell him to do. It's
Angelo, do you believe?
I have no confidence and I have no respect for Sirianni after what he had. He basically sold his soul to keep his job. It's not going to work anyway.
Angelo, do you believe these new coordinators? Because when you hire experienced coordinators like that, and you say that's the system they want,
right? When
you hire people like that, those people want to bring their own people in, and they're going to want to bring, because again, you can get a younger guy and kind of pick them. But do you think management's still going to be involved in the position coaches?
No, they won't. They will let the coordinators bring in who they want.
So that closes the box then on Nick now, where he really doesn't. There's no real job title now for him.
Exactly. No, they are going to allow these coordinators to bring their people in. They'll keep a couple of their own guys around, like office snitches, that kind of stuff. But they'll let these guys bring it in. So Sirianni will be presiding over a group of coaches, few if any of which he actually has signed off on. He's doing nothing. He's just sitting there, probably still acting like a boob on the sideline during games. I don't know what else he's doing. I'm telling you, it's just most people who are an NFL coach, regardless of how they got there, have enough self-respect to say, if this is really the role you want me to do, I'm not really your coach. I'm just your mouthpiece.
You think he should have resigned like Doug?
Well, yeah, he should, or he should have made them fire him and say, no, I'm not doing it. And then they fire him, and whatever he's got left out of his contract, they got to pay him.
2 years.
I would do that. I would make them fire me. I wouldn't resign because, he deserves to He had to. He made the playoffs all
$12
3
million
years
on his contract.
right? But you can't lose 6 out of 7 the way they did, and then acknowledge on the air that we need a ton of changes here, but not the head coach.
How about this,
Illogical.
Angelo? Have you ever in your life ever covered a coach in Philadelphia, no matter what the sport is, with a 670 win percentage, been to the playoffs 3 years in a row, had 2 coaches last year go and become head football coaches, ever get clipped like this and have been this, have his powers taken like this? I mean, like you said, he's a figurehead coach now. He's not really even a coach any longer. He's more of a like a department head.
Yeah. I had a great advantage in the years that I was at WIP, especially after the Andy Reid tenure, when I got to interview the coach one-on-one after every game, right? He would come on the day after the game and I would get to talk to him. And Chip Kelly, Doug Peterson, Nick Sirianni. Nick Sirianni never impressed me as being a big thinker. He had a lot of really kind of like these sayings and stuff about.
I thought he was dope.
Yeah, he had all these things he did that he picked up on coaching, like, every day is a new day and we got to win the day, and we got the dog analogies, the flower analogies, all that stuff. None of it resonated at all with me. I always said to myself, I said to my coworkers, we would say this after we did an interview with him, we would go, it's amazing that guy's winning. He just doesn't seem smart. He's not a good speaker. He's not a good communicator. He's programmed. He's just programmed. And it's like, it's amazing that he's winning. And then he stopped winning. And then you suddenly went, oh, all right. I don't know how he did all that winning, but I know now why he's losing. Because he didn't know what the hell to do. Didn't know what to do. Had no answers during that whole collapse in the second half of the season. Had no answers. And they bring him back because now he's got answers? No, because now he's staying out of the way, and we're going to bring in people who know how to run offenses and defense. There's no reason to have a head coach. Stupid. Absolutely stupid. It's never been clearer that the head coach of the Eagles, as of right now, is nothing more than Pinocchio, and Jeff Lurie is Geppetto. That's where we are. And just watch their noses continue to grow as they lie to the fans.
Angelo, you help me on this. It just seems that every time there's a meltdown, the fast and low-hanging fruit is to go to the quarterback. There's stories out there now.
It's wrong.
And there's all kinds of, how about this? Small whispers. And to me, I had Barrett Brooks on the other day, and he mentioned something, and that story, according to some, was kind of disputed. Britton Covey had a problem with it being said. Now, I get it. A lot of players this year walked a lot of stuff back. However, I'm in the camp. I have to see more, okay, to believe it. I saw a story by Joe, and I was thinking to myself, is this just what they do in Philly? What's your take on the leadership conversation about Jalen Hurts? Do you think that's made up? Do you think that it's just low-hanging fruit for people to go to because they went 1-6 down the line?
Jalen Hurts is a terrific leader. Jalen Hurts inspires the people that play for him, especially the really important ones, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. Yeah, they have disputes on sideline. They have heat of battle, that kind of thing. I have no reluctance to tell you that Jalen Hurts is the long-term answer at that key position on the team. None whatsoever. I've seen him. I've talked to him. I see the way he conducts himself. He knows what he's doing. What he is holding in right now is a deep frustration that a year of his career was squandered by stupid coaching, by coaching that did not in any way bring out the things he brings to a team. And he is not people. He is not your problem. The problem is the coaching. The problem is the ownership. The problem is the GM right now. That the other stuff is way down the list. You got leaders all over the place on that team, and there was no leadership at the end because the coaching failed. They even by the end, Dan, even the guys that cared the most, the people like Brandon Graham and Jason Kelsey, they saw the writing on the wall. They saw what happened to their team, and they know. And nobody harbors more ill will about what happened this year than Jalen Hurts himself, because Jalen Hurts in 2022 had established himself as one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And his retraction this week, this year, going back, his regression this year is not his fault, in my opinion.
Here's something else too. Again, and what frightens you? Did they put, after Frank Reich left, did they help Doug put proper people around Wentz? Or do you see some of the same similarities? And by the way, I'm not comparing both guys. They're completely different dudes. However, I'm talking about management, Angelo, and how they operate, because it seems that they took the Doug Peterson playbook out, 8 days, evaluate everybody, coaching meetings, talking to players, fireside chat yesterday. It looked like the Doug Peterson playbook, and now coordinators. I mean, I'm concerned about Jalen going forward with that ownership.
Yeah. I think it'll be fine if they bring in a guy to run the offense who knows how to run an offense. He's smart. You would think there's a lot of guys out there who are offensive-minded coaches who would love to work with a quarterback who does not speak out of turn, doesn't go crazy, doesn't make a spectacle of himself the way Aaron Rodgers does, who is coachable, is a good leader, is smart, is fast, has a good arm. He checks all the boxes with a good coach. You saw it in 2022. That wasn't a mirage. He'll do it again if he has a coach like Shane Steichen. He didn't have it this year. I hope they will find somebody who enhances what he brings to the table. He's not the problem. The offensive line worries me. They weren't that good this year. That story has completely been lost. That guy ran for his life half the season. Nobody knew how to pick up a blitz. That was outrageous. They never figured out how to pick up a blitz. We got that head coach. He's an offensive guy. Didn't know how to pick up a blitz. He let Tampa run him amok. Really? No, this whole look, I'm not always right. Hell knows I was wrong so much in 33 years. It's mind-boggling. But I've never seen a clearer story than this about bad coaching and bad ownership. And that's what you're watching right now. What you saw yesterday at that dog and pony show they called a press conference was one of the most embarrassing. It was as bad as the first news conference by Sirianni when he came here. That's how bad it was. Because it was like two guys that didn't even know what the hell to say.
That's fabulous take. Couple last questions for you. Two last questions, Angelo. What's the owner's position in this? Where's he in this? Because it's like, the rest of these guys are falling on swords. The rest of these guys are being scapegoats, the position coaches. What's his involvement in this here with what he's waving around and wanting to accomplish? I mean, like that press conference, like you said, Angelo, that press conference yesterday, right. Why have it?
All right. Well, here's the thing. Notice the owner was not there. The owner will only poke his head out to take praise from people when his team is doing well. This is not. This is one of the reasons I've never liked Jeff Lurie, because he doesn't face the music. He doesn't come out. He'll only come out when he's got something to pontificate about what a brilliant. The worst thing that happened in the Jeff Lurie ownership of the Eagles, believe it or not, is that they won a Super Bowl. It was a miracle that they won it. But it reinforced in his mind. In his world, Lurie surrounds himself with yes men. If you're not kissing his ass twice a day and 3 times on Sunday, you don't stick around. You got to constantly tell him he's right, all right? And this guy, after they won a Super Bowl, convinced himself he was a brilliant football guy. And he took more and more control of the team, and he found more people to serve as his puppets. And now he's got his son in there doing all the analytics stuff, which is another problem entirely. And you're seeing now an ego that is gone off the cliff. And then they lost. They were 10-1, and then they lost. And Jeff's going, well, I know one thing. None of this was my fault. Start bringing in all the people we have to get rid of. I am still a brilliant football mind. He never was. He never will be. He's a billionaire owner who should have stayed the hell out of the way. And he's not going to do that. And we're doomed because of it.
How about this, Angelo? Finally here. I think one of the reasons that 17 win was detrimental also to your organization was the only guy in the building outside the owner that has the equity. Because if you noticed at that dog and pony show yesterday, it's smart because you and I know professional answering of questions and asking of questions. He didn't use the equity of the 17 Super Bowl until someone questioned the personality. He goes, we know what we're doing because we did it in 17. You and I know you don't start you don't throw all your chips in the middle of the table at the beginning of it. You do it at the end when you have to pull that out. The only guy in the building that has that, Nick doesn't have that. That's why he can't survive what's going on right now with 1-6. Howie can. Is that, do you agree with that? That the only reason that he has been given that power is because he's really gotten rid of everybody and insulated himself with people around him that in that organization not only say that to the owner, but say that also to the GM.
Look, Howie's had a lot of great times. He's had some bad ones. Howie is a puppet in his own way. Howie is also a guy who just does what Lurie wants him to do. Now, he's got more power than the coach does, but he's still a guy who basically Lurie tells him, this is what I want, and he does it. It's the same kind of thing. But I want to be clear on one thing, because people are going to think now that you and I are saying that 2017 was damaging to the future of the team. Yeah, it probably was. But I wouldn't trade it for anything that ever happened in my life as a sports fan. Dan, to this day, this week, I got an email from someone telling me a story about how his father hung on at the end of that season to be alive when the Eagles won and how it kept him alive. No championship in any city ever meant more than 2017 Super Bowl win by the Eagles. I wouldn't trade that for anything. The problem is you had people in charge who got lucky one year and thought they invented football. And we're going to pay the price for that for a really long time.
Well, Angelo, that right there, I think you're just saying organizationally, it was detrimental, but to the culture of the city and to the fan base who had been waiting since 1960 and Tommy McDonald and guys, that was one of the greatest, probably the greatest moment in Philadelphia Eagles sports history. Maybe the 83 Sixers, the Flyers, those Philly teams that won some titles. But I got to think that 2017 team winning that championship, Angelo, for you, had to be the greatest moment in Philadelphia sports history since 1960.
For me and millions of people who to this day will just hold that to their chests and say, they can't ever take it away. We won a championship. The parade, Kelsey at the rally, all of it. I'm sorry that whenever I'm down, I think of those 2 months. It was really 2 months from the time that they won that game to 2 months after. It was the highest high that I can ever see any city ever having.
Let me ask you one question, one more last question for you on that. When the time was ticking off and it was evident that the Eagles had done that, were you in disbelief? Did you believe it? What were your thoughts when you saw that they had beaten Belichick and Brady and you knew that they were winning a Super Bowl? Was it a surreal feeling for you that they had finally accomplished that?
When the ball hit the ground on that Hail Mary, because even to that moment, I was fearful that something would go wrong. I didn't jump up and down. I didn't go crazy. I sat there and just absorbed the feeling, because I never thought I would, in all the years I was at WIP, I never thought I'd get to experience that. It's the ultimate. The Eagles are the most important team in our city, and they won the championship. And to this day, all these years later, it's 6 years now, I go back to that moment over and over again, not because of the jubilation of it, just for the sense of relief that all of that time that we waited, we got rewarded. We won. All the pain we went through, we won. They can't ever take that away. We won. And that's why when they got rid of Doug Peterson, I was infuriated because he won it. He was the number one reason. He had the boldness to do things. And Nick Foles, they wouldn't have won it with Wentz. They won it with Foles. All those people will always be immortalized to me in that they brought us the greatest gift we ever had as a fan base. And I got to talk to thousands of people in the years since then. And it's the greatest thing that ever happened in our city.
Is that the number one thing that's brought up to you now that you're going around on your book tour here? And
all the time.
This great book, is that the thing they talk about as 17?
Dan, all the time. Everybody's got a personal story about what happened in the moment you just took us to, that last play, and then the feeling. And that's why I get so frustrated now, because I want it again. We deserve it again. We've had one since 1960. It'd be okay for us to have another one. But it's not going to happen when Nick Sirianni is on the sideline. I guarantee you that. You had your shot last year and you blew it.
Yeah. No, you're not winning a Super Bowl unless that guy's canned.
It's going to be a while now, Dan, and that's the hard thing.
Remember I told you, Angelo, I said I made a prediction to you a couple weeks ago that you're going to be a 5-win team in 2 years.
Yeah.
You're expediting that and saying that this is going to be a horrible year next year.
Take the under on whatever the win-loss total is. Take the under. They're not going to have a good season next year. And Dan, I just want to thank you for how generous you've been and getting me on.
Thank you.
All these sports. It's been a trip. And I just want to tell all the people that already watch you, and it's lots and lots of people because I've heard from them. This is a guy who tells a story. He tells you the truth. This guy understands football, and he tells it straight. And listen to Dan Sileo. I would just love to just hand the ball off to you, my friend. Because I think you are most the style that I enjoyed for all the years I did.
God.
Telling it straight and not giving a damn what the team or the coaches or the players, what any of them think.
That's the greatest compliment.
I'm handing the ball to Dan Sileo. Dan, you're awesome.
Hey, Angelo, that's the greatest compliment I've ever had in my broadcasting career. Thank you very much. Folks, do me a favor.
Thank you.
Please get the book. Angelo, I won't harass you for another 4 weeks.
You know me, Dan. It's not like I got a lot going on here. So
please get the book. Angelo, thank you, my friend. I really appreciate it. God bless you, Angelo. Okay. Thank you, Tone. Okay. Tone said this: I cried in my father's arms when we won it. That's why I go so hard when this team screws up. Yeah. Whew. It's quite a compliment. Randy Cross will join us. We'll kind of switch gears a little bit and talk some NFC Championship. Tomorrow we'll talk to Kadri Ishmael too. We'll talk a little bit of the Ravens versus the Chiefs. Hit the like button. Keep it here on the National Football Show.
Football and Hooters, the perfect pair.
Any professional sports coach will tell you there's no substitution for preparation. At Malamut and Associates, that is a tenet by which we live. We prepare from day one for victory. Anything less is not acceptable.
Underdog Fantasy has a way for you to play alongside your favorite football team all season long with their fantasy pick'em game. You pick between 2 to 5 players, select whether they'll go higher or lower on one of their stats, then do what you usually do on a Sunday, watch the games. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single game by going 5 for 5. It's a fantasy game, and the Sports Betting Show wants you to get involved. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. When you sign up, use the promo code WIN, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
EAGLES, Eagles.
I got to tell you, man, it's quite an interview. And to have Angelo Cataldi tell me that he'd like to pass the baton and the torch to me, you know, it probably doesn't mean anything to you guys. Some of you guys it might, because you guys listen to him for all your life. Most of you were raised by him when you're talking sports talk. But see, a lot of people don't put those compliments at me. And to hear him saying that you do shows like me, I'm like, it's quite a compliment to say that he would like to pass the torch to me. Thank you, Angelo. Look at what I love here about I'm Awake or You. This guy gives me as much shit as anybody. You Philly people are sensational. Every single one of you that I give shit to and you give shit to me. You're the best group of people. And by the way, those of you not from Philly that watch the show, I appreciate it. I think Eagle fans work hard, play hard, love hard, and bitch hard. You know, Greasy, that's funny. That's me too. Has that been confirmed? Raheem Morris is the head coach of the Falcons. Yeah, that was a very nice compliment. Is Raheem the head football coach? Has he been named to the Atlanta Falcons? You know why he's named the Atlanta Falcons head coach? Rich McKay's in the building, and he was in Tampa, and there's a connection there. I want to show you guys something that I don't really like to do. Okay? Oh, God, that's so wonderful. That's so wonderful. God forbid that's great news. Okay. I can't really show you his number, but there's Raheem Morris on my cell phone. After this program, I'll text him. Hopefully get him on. Fantastic. I swear to you guys, I was so mean to him when I first met him. I'm going to post some pictures of me and him together. We used to have lunch every day when he was the head coach. And I did this, I swear to you. I put up a piece of paper just like this. And I went like this. I go, you know what this is? He goes, what? I go, it's your resume. What makes you qualified to be the head football coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? He goes, Dan, I don't know. And I go, did you think you were getting fired? Because they had just fired John Gruden. Did you think you were getting fired? He goes, yes, I did. He's just so young then. I didn't think he was qualified. And I told him. Didn't have a very good stint. But you know what he was? He was genuine and honest. Unlike that bullshit show you saw yesterday. Atlanta got a quality man. Whew. Man, what a great hire. Shit, you have no idea what kind of great man that is. Players are going to play for him. He's more experienced. He's more worldly. There's going to be more opportunities for African-American assistant coaches. McKay's in the building, going to give him everything he needs, the president of the team. Arthur Blank's going to give him everything he needs. What does that mean for Belichick? What's left? Seattle and Washington? Vrabel's getting one of these jobs. Okay? Now, Vrabel still owed money on his contract. Okay? He's still owed money. I don't know if Bill is, too. Bill maybe owed some money. Okay? Raheem's a great coach. Eagles press conference was 2024 version of the Muppet Show. Man. Wow. Congratulations to Raheem Morris. That is an absolutely fantastic hire. Boy, man, Angelo went knee deep into these guys. You know what Tone was saying behind the scenes? He's like, that's why I missed that guy doing morning drive on WIP. He called it out. He surely did. He surely did. And you know what's telling about some of these hires? Is that look at the quality coaching that you're getting hired now. Raheem Morris beat out Bill Belichick and Mike Vrabel to get the head coaching position in Atlanta. You got a coach now in Los Angeles and Jim Harbaugh. You're going to get a quality coach in Washington and in Seattle. There's not enough chairs for all these quality guys. That's when you know you have a strong market. And you kept that guy? Raheem Morris can run circles around that guy. You know why? He's trustworthy. You respect him. How could you possibly come away from that press conference yesterday and respect anything that came out of that press conference? How could you possibly? How could you possibly come out of that? Angelo called it a dog and pony show. Raheem would laugh at Lori. You know what Raheem would do? He wouldn't laugh at him. You know what he would try to do? He would try to sell him on his philosophy of why they should do something. He wouldn't be combative. That's the kind of guy he is. You know what I'm saying, Tone? He's not a guy that's going to go, fuck that. He's the guy that's going to do this. This is why we have to do this. This is why we need to do this. This is why we need to hire this assistant. He knows more than me. He's more qualified than me. Do you know what Raheem's going to do immediately? There's going to be a quality offensive coordinator that's going to be hired. Hey, don't be shocked if Brian Johnson gets the job in Atlanta and Raheem brings him down there. I would not be shocked because I know they know each other. I would not be shocked if Brian Johnson gets the Atlanta offensive coordinating job. Or he's on that staff in some capacity, like a quarterback coach or what have you. Yeah, I promise you. Keep an eye on that one. Okay? I just want to thank once again. Angelo just sent me a great text saying that he wants to pass the baton to Big Sills. Thank you very much, Angelo. Means a lot coming from the number one sports talk guy in the history of Philadelphia. Thank you again, sir. He watches the show and he watches it loyally too. So we thank him for that compliment. Really great. All right. Let's reset here a little bit before we get on Randy Cross, we're going to talk a little NFC Championship. That'll be at the bottom of the hour, the owner of three Super Bowls. The job that Brock Purdy, by the way, is up for the MVP award, along with Christian McCaffrey and Lamar Jackson. Those are your three candidates for the most valuable player. No question about it. That's going to be a telling game. It's going to be an interesting ball game. Deebo Samuel most likely is not going to play in that ball game. So will that be a little bit telling? And as I do want to reset a little bit of that fireside chat we had yesterday. And as Angelo and I were talking, you had 2 weeks for what you put on display. 2 weeks for that. Man. And you see these hires that are coming up around the league. It's like, here, I'll make this comment to you. Tell me if you buy what I'm going to say here. Before we're going to reset here. I wrote down the top 10 NFC teams preseason on teams that I think are going to get better and teams are going to be in the mix to win the NFC next year. I put number 10, I think the Falcons, before they even hired Raheem. Is that Kirk Cousins? Kirk Cousins in the NFC South would be the best quarterback. You put Kirk Cousins, okay, in Atlanta. Do they win the division? Yeah. Hope we sign Cliff as OC. Interesting take. I'm going to write that down. Cliff Kingsbury's talking. He's getting a lot of run, by the way. I got the Vikings at 9. Quarterback decision and what's going to happen there. Could that be a landing spot for Russell Wilson? I don't know. They got to do something there at the quarterback position. But I think that's a good coach and a good organization. Number 8, I got the Seahawks. I think Dan Quinn gets that job. Business as usual. They need a quarterback. Geno's kind of like the guy that's going to hold the mail together there. I got the Buccaneers at 7. I think the Bucs under Todd Bowles is a good team. I think Baker's they're going to be better. At 6, I got the Rams. I think Sean McVay's rejuvenated. I think that Rams organization's going to start getting some draft choices back. I think they're going to be better. I got the Eagles 5 in the NFC next year. 5. I got the Cowboys 4. I got the Packers 3. I got the Lions 2. I got the 49ers 1. Guys, you couldn't beat the Giants at the end of the year. The Buccaneers blew your doorknobs off. Seattle beat the shit out of you. Purdy's a fraud? I don't think so. Had a superior year to Jalen. I find that insulting when people say that about other guys who outplay your guy. And you're going to go, would you take Purdy over Hurts? No, because I like a 2-year sample size to that. Before I make those kind of comments, not a 1-year wonder. So I want to see 2 years. So the last 2 years for Jalen, would I take Purdy over him? I don't know. Probably not, because Jalen could do more. I'm just being honest. Hurts can do more. I'll tell you what I did like to hear. Tone, I bet you loved what you heard too with Angelo. Angelo says he blames Jalen for none of this. He says he's a product of the environment around him. I'm paraphrasing that part of it. But he says his bullshit season this year was a product of everything around him. And he has no accountability in this whatsoever in his eyes, because there were poor leadership everywhere around him. Hey, look, you could be the strongest leader in the building, but if you've got your bosses that are shitty leaders, there's no chance that you can put your leadership front and center when you're not allowed to. You know what I mean? Crazy. So the NFC is going to get better. Are the Eagles getting, hey, 49ers are trending up. Lions are trending up. Packers are trending up. The Cowboys, I don't know. So I'm going to say they're going to have a steady heartbeat. You guys think the Eagles are trending up? You think the Eagles are trending up? I think the Rams are trending up. I think the Bucks are trending up. I don't know about the Seahawks, okay, but they're getting a lot of draft picks. Vikings, I'm not sure what they're going to do at quarterback. I think the Falcons are trending up now with Raheem's hire. I do. I think they are. Back to resetting that disaster yesterday. I'm really glad that Angelo called that thing one of the biggest dog and pony shows in the history of Philadelphia sports, because it was. And the conversation about Nick and Howie sitting there and the lies that they told for 35 minutes was completely on display. It was 35 minutes of lies. And I agree with him. Money Goes Sills has Philly fans in a panic mode. No, what do you mean panic mode? All you had to do was watch that press conference. How are you not concerned after that thing? Hey, it's one thing for me to have a fat mouth, and it's another thing for me to say something, or it's another thing for even Angelo to say something. It's another thing to sit there and listen and make your own assessment. And if you come away from that press conference yesterday enlightened, you got a problem with what enlightenment is. There was not, anybody who thought that thing was positive. I get it. You have a lot of empathy for something. Me, I don't. I have empathy for winning. That was not a winning press conference. Chuck's right. It was a complete disgraceful display of bullshit. The point I want to know, though, why did you feel compelled to get in front of people yesterday to do that? Why did you feel compelled to do that? I'm going to say something here to you before we get Randy Cross on. Let me tell you about this guy Purdy here, what they got going on in San Fran. Do you know that dude's making $870,000 a year? Starting March 17th, Jalen Hurts is going to make $900,000 a week. And do you know that that guy gives Kyle Shanahan and gives John Lynch 2 years of equity to build their roster up and have salary cap integrity for 2 years? That's how you build dynasties. Montana was a third-round pick. Think about the money they didn't pay him. Joe wasn't a high-paid guy until his contract was up. This guy was a third-rounder. Montana was a third-round pick. They were magical, the 49ers, in getting guys in latter rounds, finding guys. That's how they built that organization into the best organization in the 80s and 90s. And they're doing it again. I think Lynch is just taking a page out of John McVay and Bill Walsh's book, and a guy who works for CBS. won 3 Super Bowls, and he works with CBS. NFC title game is in Santa Clara, not quite San Fran, and keep him in the dirt, but it's our friend Randy Cross. Randy, keep him in the dirt, baby.
Yeah, take him to the swamp.
Coldest time you could ever play a football game is in September in San Francisco at Candlestick Point. I mean, you freeze your baguettes off out there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and if you really hit it wrong, it's cold and it's high tide. So you're
Absolutely. Randy, are you surprised that they're back in the NFC title game?
No. I mean, the things that had to break right have pretty much broken right. I mean, you got to have the injuries go the right way, and everybody knows that now. I mean, if it happens for you in that second half of the season where you don't lose your more valuable bodies, you're going to be right there. And the way that they're built, man, I mean, they can run the ball with CMC. They can throw it like crazy, obviously, with Purdy at quarterback. And they got a defense that, do they bend? Yeah, they don't break real often. And, you know, occasionally this year, especially in the second half, they've gotten touchdowns scored on them the first possession by offenses. And then the offense on the other team turns around and goes, oh, wait a minute. Have they scored the last 5 times he had the ball?
Yeah, right. I mean,
You know?
they score in bunches, man. I mean, have you been surprised, Randy, with the play? Get this. I've never seen this. You flop on a guy you wasted 3 ones on, and you land on a guy that you all of a sudden, you look at his numbers. This guy's got numbers better than Montana. This guy's got numbers better. I get a different era, a whole different thing. The wide receivers being killed in the line of scrimmage. I get all that, but still, have you been surprised by his development?
Not really. You saw at the end of last year that got sort of obviously stunted by what happened in that NFC Championship game. But, you know, his recovery, how little have you heard about that? I mean, he had basically Tommy John surgery on his elbow. And he was back by the first regular season game. He's in camp. He's throwing the ball early. No, I'm not surprised. I mean, I think Kyle Shanahan has done a really masterful job with Brock Purdy as far as how he's taught him and the options he's given him. And watching him progress and read the field and watch those receivers adjust to him, it's been fun to watch. It really has. It's been something that's been, you know, as a former 49er, I guess I'm always a 49er, but as a former player for them, it's something that brings back a lot of good memories because, you know, I think he's got the potential to be that good a player. And despite that, there are idiots in that fan base that would take Trey Lance back right now. It's like, can you see that? The ball was wet. It wasn't coming out right. Get rid of him. I mean, it's like, give me a break, you idiots. It's insufferable, but it's not any more insufferable than your typical, you know, sort of sports-generated stuff these days that it's all based on takes. You got a hot take, you're good. You know, even if you're a fan, you got a hot take, you're good.
I'll tell you this, Randy. Trey Lance is not better than Colin Kaepernick. So to sit there and say you're better than that kid, that what that guy's doing right now, how about this little statistic for you that Bill Walsh would probably even love? He attempted the least amount of passes of any quarterback in the top 20 and finished second or third in passing yards. Shows you the effective and the efficiency of what they did with that quarterback and how good he was and effective he was. They threw the least amount of passes, and you're like third or second in total passing yards. That's amazing. Yeah. Does that offense and does Kyle kind of remind you a little bit of Bill?
A little bit of Bill. A lot more of his dad. You know, a lot more of Mike, you know, because of the running back emphasis and the movement.
And Mike was in San Fran, I believe. Yeah. He was in San Fran with Seifert.
Yeah, he was. And, you know, the whole emphasis on movement in the offensive line, that reminds me a lot of Mike Shanahan. All the motion, all the formations, There's a little bit of Joe Gibbs in there. There's a little bit of Bill Walsh in there. There's very, very, still even today, even in an offense like this, there's very little new. And, everybody kind of cannibalizes old ideas. And I think as we currently see it, Kyle's doing the best job of that.
Think about what the team you're playing, and I got to hand it to Dan Campbell. I thought he was a WWE guy, and he was getting ready to, like, all of a sudden the kneecap shit and all that. And, Chris Billman was telling me, Sills, this guy's the real deal. And sure enough, Chris was right. This guy is the real deal. But do you know he's the winningest coach in the postseason in the Super Bowl era and all time in Detroit history for postseason wins? And they've been around for 1 billion years. Just to show you, they don't win up at that place. Mm-hmm. Talk about that Lions team. I mean, It's been a remarkable turnaround. Look at all the hits that they're hitting with Brad Holmes, their general manager. It's been remarkable.
Yeah, they've done a fantastic job of drafting and making deals and getting talent. I mean, you look at, where do you want to go? You want to go Aiden Hutchinson? You want to go over there? You want to go Campbell at linebacker?
Penei Sewell?
You want to go to Penei Sewell, who's, that to me is one of the highlights of the game Sunday. Is you get to watch two of the most dominant offensive tackles in the game that not only are big and fast, but they can scoot and they can move people. I mean, that's going to be great. But I mean, the Lions personnel, it's not quite as good as the Niners, I don't think. But I tell you, their hits have been gigantic, and they're probably 2 or 3 more of those away from being a dominant team. And there's not a fan base in the league that deserves this more. Maybe Cleveland, but I mean, Detroit, it's been since that 57 game when they came back at Kezar Stadium to beat the Niners.
That's right. It was the Niners at Kezar.
Yep.
That's right, man. That's correct. That's right. The Lions, last time they won a world championship
was 81, Dan, we heard all about that stuff. All about it.
When you guys went to Detroit?
We went to the NFC Championship game against Dallas. We heard about all the times the Niners had failed against Dallas. We heard about the times the Niners had failed against Detroit. We heard the times that Niners had failed against Cleveland. I mean, it was crazy. But, yeah.
How many NFC title games did you play in, Randy?
4.
What one sticks out the most to you? Was it the catch in the back of the end zone with Clark?
To me, I've always been – the catch, the ones that were positives, the 2 times we beat the Bears and the time we beat the Cowboys were pretty magical. The 83 team, I think, would have been a world champion if we'd have gotten out of RFK. And the whole thing with the officials and whatnot was a little dicey. But that game really stuck with me to this day. I mean, the 2 times we lost to the Giants in the playoffs, one time I was there, one time I wasn't. I mean, they literally physically beat us. They deserve that. And we lost in 87 to the Vikings in the divisional round. But of all the times I was in the championship game, it was that game against the Skins that sort of stuck in my craw. Of course, if it hadn't stuck in all our craws, we probably wouldn't have been 18-1 the next year.
I'll make this point to you. Isn't it funny? The only things that you harp on are the losses. You don't really look at the wins anymore because you're like this, because that shows you how spoiled this guy is, folks, because he's had so many brilliant ones. Well, let me throw this at you. I've never asked you this one. The last drive with Montana of your career in Miami, or the first drive for the Super Bowl with the catch, what meant more to you in your career? Because again, it was the beginning and the end for you in your career of winning. Think about that. Again, folks, you got to understand that game at Detroit is still today the most watched game in Super Bowl history. And you had nobody but our great friend, Freddie Solomon, Cooper, Wendell Tyler. It wasn't Rice. It wasn't Taylor. It wasn't Craig. It wasn't any of those guys. It was just a cast of those guys that you guys had put together with McVay. There was that great game at Candlestick. Then you go and play Cincinnati. I think you beat them 27-21 or 28-21, something like that. It was a one-score game. And then that last drive with Montana taking you down the sidelines to win another Super Bowl. What do you think you look back on more fondly?
Well, it's kind of hard to badmouth, the opportunity.
Right. It's like talking about to your two kids, right?
It's hard to badmouth the ability to kind of ride off into the sunset, a Super Bowl champion, which is what happened after Super Bowl 23. But I think it was that first one against Dallas. Beating them, they had embarrassed us so bad for a couple of years in a row before that. They were so arrogant. It was very, very special. And it's worth remembering. We had a great point of reference because we had recently really sucked.
Yeah.
So going to a Super Bowl, 2 years before that we were 2-14. The year before that we were 6-10. Then we go 16-3, go to the Super Bowl and win it. And I wouldn't say appropriately, but we might have over celebrated that offseason. I'm not sure.
Hey, did it mean more beating? This is a crazy question because it's a Super Bowl ring. And actually, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was Summerall and Madden's first Super Bowl that they called in the booth for CBS at the time. Did you get more personal satisfaction in beating Dallas than you did in winning the Super Bowl against Cincinnati?
I don't think so. It's still the Super Bowl.
Can't.
No. But we had played Dallas earlier in the year and whipped their ass. And they insisted that we hadn't played the real Dallas. And we had played Cincinnati earlier in the year in Cincinnati and beaten them. So now getting the Super Bowl, making that halftime lead, it was 20-0 at halftime. So we might have relaxed a little bit in the second half, and thank God for the goal line stand and everything else. But yeah, I'd say it was still the Super Bowl. I'd have to go with that.
Randy, it's coming back to me now because when I was on KMBR in the Bay Area, I used to get Bill Walsh on. I think Bill may have been at Stanford at the end there a little bit because he gave me his book. I got a signed copy of his book. And I asked him in that first Super Bowl year what his fondest memory was. You know what he said? And I hadn't thought about it, and I didn't know the history of it. He goes, "What do you think it was?" I go, "Well, it has to be winning that game." And he goes, "We played Cincinnati in a regular season. And going back to Cincinnati and beating Paul Brown's Bengals when Paul Brown was doing everything he could to undermine me on getting jobs in the NFL. It came out Mr. DeBartolo had told him there was a Green Bay job. The Charger job was open. The Ram job was open. And Paul Brown, people don't know this story, and I hope I'm not saying something out of school here, but he said, I go, so Paul Brown was undermining. He goes, Mr. DeBartolo told me the story too, that Paul Brown was undermining Bill because he didn't want Bill to get all the credit for that team back in the day in Cincinnati when Paul was the head coach, and that he would undermine him getting these jobs. And he recommended to DeBartolo not to hire him. And then he goes, no, I'm going to hire him. Then he went to the Blue Bonnet Bowl and they found some of these guys and all this stuff. And I went back and did the history, and then Mr. DeBartolo told me story. But so it had to be a little bit more of that too, because many people don't know that story. So beating the Bengals in the Super Bowl probably meant a lot to you guys because it was for Bill Walsh, because Bill had been passed over for that job that he was promised.
Oh, yeah. He would never publicly say much about that. You wouldn't hear it in a press conference. You wouldn't. He'd have a few choice words behind closed doors about that situation. He'd take some veiled cracks at him. He'd look. We'd be at practice the week of the Super Bowl. We had the early practice date, and the Bengals practiced late, and we both practiced at the Dome. So we're in a practice, and we're playing music. We're playing air guitars behind the defense and doing all this stuff. And Bill start laughing, and he's kind of shadow boxing. He looks around. He goes, hey, look. You look down at the other end zone, and the Bengals are standing in the tunnel. Got their helmets clicked up. They've got, and they're sitting there with Forrest Gregg like, we're ready to go. This is for practice. Bill's going, ooh, that looks bad, doesn't it?
Didn't they pass for so Bill said this, that they Paul Brown called him in, and I think they went with Blanton Collier or somebody like that.
Bill Johnson.
Bill Johnson, that's it. And
Bill
he
Line
said
coach.
to him, I don't think you have the temperament to be a head football coach in the NFL. And that stuck with Bill.
Oh, yeah.
His entire coaching career, that he didn't have the temperament, until Kevin Fagan told me a story about you guys when you guys would practice. And I'm going to get a little raunchy here, guys. So Bill would go like this, and he would go to like McKintrick, or he'd go to all those position coaches. You can't get these guys going. You son of a... He would get in all of their assistant coaches, and it empowered you guys to go, shit, man. I don't want my assistant coaches to get shit on like that by Bill Walsh. He never really killed you guys, but he would kill the assistant coaches. I thought it was a slick way of coaching you guys.
Yeah, it was pretty good. He'd jump on Bob McKittrick, or he'd jump on Hackett, or he'd jump on Milt Jackson, he was an equal opportunity dogger. But, it worked. He'd rarely get after us. When he got after you, you knew damn well you deserved it.
Absolutely. Randy, couple questions, if I may, on the AFC. Mm-hmm. Mahomes, I've bet against this guy too much now, man. I'm starting to do the shit that I did with Brady. And I'm going like, how can you go against Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, right? And so just your take, couple questions here on this, if you can. How do you see that game playing out, AFC title game?
Baltimore looks like they're kind of that team. And they have since they just butt whipped San Francisco in San Francisco. It's been like, ooh, that looks familiar. I've seen Baltimore on that kind of roll. And they look like they're back on that kind of roll. I love Kansas City. I think they've got a lot of stuff going for them. They may be down an all-pro guard. I just don't see Mahomes pulling any of that Mahomes magic, not in Baltimore against that defense, having to keep pace with what can be done on the other side with Lamar.
49ers, Ravens again. This time, I think the 49ers win it. And back to you, lowlifes, winning all those damn games and Super Bowls and going to Hawaii.
They finally get number 6. Been a while.
By the way, tell everyone you're 3-0, right?
Oh yeah,
Oh yeah, it's like Jordan. I'm 6-0. Cross is 3-0. We don't lose Super Bowls. And I tell folks this too, Randy. Joe Montana threw 14 touchdowns in Super Bowl play, never threw a pick, had 135 quarterback rating. Mm-hmm. That's how you win those games. Randy, thank you, my friend.
Anytime. Enjoy the games this weekend. It's going to be fantastic.
Fantastic. Thank you so much to my good friend, College Football Hall of Famer. He also works at CBS Sports. We really appreciate him coming aboard. That should be a great game this weekend. All right, guys, do me a favor. Hit the like button. Keep it here, National Football Show.
Football and Hooters, the perfect pair.
Any professional sports coach will tell you there's no substitution for preparation. At Malamut & Associates, that is a tenet by which we live. We prepare from day one for victory. Anything less is not acceptable.
Underdog Fantasy has a way for you to play alongside your favorite football team all season long with their fantasy pick'em game. You pick between 2 to 5 players, select whether they'll go higher or lower on one of their stats, then do what you usually do on a Sunday, watch the games. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single game by going 5 for 5. It's a fantasy game, and the Sports Betting Show wants you to get involved. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. When you sign up, use the promo code WIN, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Big Sills! Pretty good stuff today, man. Thank you guys for coming aboard. Really great. Really great. Really great. Absolutely. Okay. I forgot to do this. And because this is the year ender, I wrote down the top 10 quarterbacks in the National Football League according to Big Sills. Here's your ender. Number 10, Matthew Stafford. 39-65, 29 or 24 touchdowns. I get Jared Goff, number 9. 45-75 in yards. 67.3 quarterback rating, 30 touchdowns, 12 picks, 97.9. NFC title game. Okay. CJ Stroud. Hang on. Don't get your butt up here, man. He said these last 10 minutes are going to sting. He said these last 10 minutes are going to sting. You're not going to get away with that. It's not going to happen. Okay, you tell me if I'm wrong here on this.
No, you're all good, man. It's just I just know my guy's not on there.
You debate because you know what? For like one of the I'll tell you what, man. I'm sorry I have to tell you this, bud.
I know.
I'm like a fungus to you, man. I think I'm growing on you, man, because I hear you going, I don't agree with that. And I'm going, wait, what's that? You know, and I'm going, I'm talking like you go like to like your interview guys, which is phenomenally great. Wasn't Angelo sensational today?
Oh my God. Angelo is always tremendous when he comes on, man. It just brings back the memories. Like those morning drives, those morning rides to school. Like just, yeah.
You had to grow up with that guy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Angelo's voice is trademarked. You know what I mean?
I want to pass the baton to you.
That was cold, wasn't it? That was cold.
That was the greatest compliment I've ever had in my broadcasting career from somebody I revere. I was like, I told James, I want that freaking posted. Okay. And I'm going to save that in my wallet for the rest of my life.
You know, so funny. You know what they say? They say never meet your heroes, right? But Angelo Cataldi, he's one of one. That's the hero you want to meet.
Man, I would just okay. So anyway, enough because you Philly guys can't take ass kissing and rainbows and butterflies. So we understand this.
Not too much.
Okay, so number 10, I got Stafford.
I like that, by the way.
39-65. Now, what I didn't like was I didn't realize his completion percentage was that low, 62.6. But his rating was 92.5. He had 24 touchdown passes. At 9, I had golf. And by the way, at the end of this, I'll ask you, would you replace any of these guys with Hurts? Okay, so I'll just tell you now, Hurts ain't on this list.
Right.
Jared Goff.
That's why I said it's going to sting, because I know my man's not on that list.
Jared Goff, 9, 45.75, 67.3 completion percentage, 30 touchdowns, 12 picks, 97.9. Number 8, I got Stroud, 41.08, 63.9, but his touchdown interception ratio, I think, was the best in the league, 23-5, had a 100.8 rating.
Mm-hmm.
Number 7, I had Jordan Love, 41.59, 64.2, 32 touch. I can't believe he threw that many. 11 picks, 96.1. I got Mahomes 6, believe it or not. And I probably should have my head examined. By the way, I stole that from you. I don't know how many times I'm going to continue to bet against this guy, because this guy's, if I'm betting money, man, I'd be in a poorhouse.
I've been betting against him all year.
Dude, I get it. 41.83, 67.2. Look, this is a down year for Mahomes. Watch this. 41.83, 67.2 completion percentage, 27 touchdowns, 14 picks, 92.6. And that's a down year for him.
It's crazy.
Crazy. Number 5, I got Tua, 46.24, 69.3 completion percentage, 29 touchdowns, 14 picks, 101.1. I got Josh Allen 4th, 43.06, 66.5, 29.18, touchdowns, interceptions, 92.2. I got Dak 3rd at 45.16 yards, 69.5 in completion percentage. This is a great touchdown interception ratio too. 36-9, 105.9. Purdy's is insane. Purdy had 42.80, least amount of attempts of any quarterback in the top 20. 69.4 completion percentage, 31 touchdowns, 11 picks, 113 rating. And here's the outlier, which brings Jalen into the conversation, is the number one guy is Lamar. Of all these guys, he threw for 36.78. I think he played in all the games too. 67.2 completion percentage. Another good quarterback touchdown interception ratio at 24.7 with a 102.7. Again, you got to look at Lamar and Allen and Hurts differently, and I get it, because you're looking more of impact a game.
Right.
Would you put Jalen in that top 10?
When I look at the names that you have ahead of him,
maybe Stafford?
Maybe. I mean, Stafford did miss games.
He did. And he got hot in the back end of the 8.
And he got hot in the back end.
Remember something. We have recency bias with Jalen looking like the team looked down the stretch. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
that's true.
Matthew Stafford looked great down the stretch.
That's true. Okay, so I like your list, by the way. I will move some things around.
Okay, tell me. I'd like to hear yours.
So at number 1, I put Lamar. Number 2, I put Purdy. Number 3, I put Allen.
Okay.
Number 4, I put Dak.
Okay.
Number 5, I put Mahomes.
Okay.
6, I have Goff.
Yeah, I probably had him too low.
7, I have Tua. 8, I have Stroud. 9, I have Love. And then 10 is where those interceptions are really hard for me to really get. Well,
I like your list better.
The turnovers. The turnovers are really hard for me to get behind when it comes to Hurts. It's really hard. He had 19 of them. He had 9. How many turnovers
did he have? Stafford had 11.
11 turnovers total?
No, 11 interceptions. I don't know what his fumbles were.
Okay. If we're not, because Hurts fumbled the ball four times. So I think he had 15 interceptions. But Hurts had like 40 touchdowns, didn't he? Or 38 touchdowns?
Yeah.
How many did he have?
Dude,
Something like 35. It was 38. I don't know.
It was like 47 touchdowns or something.
How many touchdowns does Stafford have total?
I don't know if he had any. Well, he may have had 2 or 3, but he had 24 passing. I can't think this guy's running it in the end zone.
Right.
This guy can't jump over a stack of quarters, and I'm not thinking there's 5 or 8 TDs in there somewhere.
I may have to edge Hurts over Stafford.
Yeah, probably.
I understand he has the turnovers. I get that. But I just feel like Hurts was just more productive and available.
You know that one thing you said when we were talking about Allen? The amount of first downs he had and the amount of touchdowns both those dudes have.
Yeah.
So you probably have to put that into that conversation too a little bit, right?
Exactly. Yeah, the rushing yards, the ability to move the chains, just the dynamic nature of the way they play the position. I would, it's if Hurts didn't have all those turnovers, in my opinion, he'd be ahead of Love, he'd be ahead of Tua, he'd be ahead
Love
of Goff.
had 32 touchdowns.
Say it again.
Love had 32 touchdowns.
I know, 32, and that's not counting the ones he ran in.
Shit, man.
As a matter
Dude,
of fact,
they got somebody in that dude. Him and Love, they got some dude. That I can't wait to see Anthony Richardson next year.
Yeah, so Jordan Love in 2023, he had a grand total of 36 touchdowns, 32 passing, 4 rushing. Jalen Hurts, on the other hand, had a grand total of, let me make sure I got that number right. Give me 1 second. Jalen Hurts had a grand total of 38 touchdowns on the season. So he ended the season with 38 touchdowns, 15 interceptions.
Wow.
And 4 lost fumbles. So he turned the ball over.
You give me half those turnovers, he's in the MVP conversation again.
He ended the season with 38 touchdowns.
That's a lot.
A 65% completion percentage.
That's a
he had 4,400 total yards on just in grand total. It's the turnovers. That's literally it. And it really kills him. So
hey, one of the reasons also I wanted to finish up with you. What'd you make of Angelo going like this? I don't blame anything on Jalen. I blame it on the environment around him.
I do have I have to put some blame.
A little. I do too.
But Jalen's not the person I'm looking at really, because I trust Jalen to take care of his
I'm looking at him as a problem solver.
Right, exactly. I trust Jalen to take care of his business. Other than that, I do think, okay, if I had to give you a percentage, I believe 25% goes to Jalen Hurts, 75% goes to everybody else.
Okay. That's about right. Tone, great stuff, man. I appreciate it.
It's always fun. I appreciate you.
Okay. Thank you very much. I love talking to Tone, man. By the way, that was awesome. We're going to get our friend Kadri Ishmael, who does the play-by-play for the Baltimore Ravens. Yes, it's Rocket Ishmael's brother. Played with the team. I believe he won a Super Bowl with the Ravens. And we're going to have the Philly Godfather on, as he always is, at 5:30. Xander, Big Joe, we appreciate it. Thank you, Angelo, for coming on. That was absolutely spectacular. Tone, keep kicking that ass, man. 2 to 6 Eastern time tomorrow. We shall see you on the flip side.
Football and Hooters, the